Chapter 2495. Afterwards, the doubtful Qin Yishuan left for the southern region through a teleportation formation under Hui's enthusiastic reception. At the same time, Jianqin stood below the Divine King on the distant Prosper Plain. He silently stared at Qin Yishuan, who had risen up the rankings once again. She had now reached the 940th rank. His mind was filled with thoughts. He knew that Qin Yishuan had begun to soar the moment she received Sword Master Yun Qi's legacy. Although he had no idea how great her future accomplishments would be, it definitely would not stop there. After dismissing his thoughts, Jianqin no longer paid any more attention to the Divine King. He turned around and vanished into the crowd. If it were not for the matters on the Star Brilliance plane, if Kea was still present, he might have raised his cup to congratulate Qin Yishuan. But now, he was only filled with fury and hatred. How could he celebrate? Jianqin was in no hurry to go to the heavenly palace of Bixing. He rented a manor in the bustling city first. The manor was quite large, and it was enveloped by layers of powerful formations. Its defenses were extremely great. Jianqin had spent 5 colored divine crystals to rent it. There was a secret room deep underground in the manor. Jianqin had activated all the formations in the manor as he sat in the secret room. The damaged Anita tower hovered before him silently. The sword slashes on it were clearly visible. Jianqin sat there as he stared at the Anita tower. The Anita tower originated from the sea realm of the Tianyuan continent. He had faced many life-threatening situations along the way, and the Anita tower had blocked many of them for him. It could be said that he would not be where he was today if it were not for the Anita tower. As a result, he had developed a faint attachment to the Anita tower. Now, the Anita tower was about to leave him. However, Jianqin did not miss it at all. Although the Anita tower was powerful, it was damaged and extremely difficult to refine. He was nowhere close to being able to unleash its full power. As his strength increased in the future, the Anita tower would become less and less useful to him. Moreover, the Anita tower was a hot potato. It was coveted by everyone and had caused him quite a lot of trouble in the past few years. Even Kea had died because of it. As a result, he felt no reluctance at all when he returned the Anita tower to the heavenly palace of Bixing. The most precious parts of the Anita tower are the sword slashes on it. These sword slashes were left behind by the greatest expert of the immortals' world, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. Every single one of them contains the will of the sword god. If I can comprehend a little of it, it will definitely be extremely beneficial, Jianqin said. Jianqin thought. He stared at the slash for a while before entering the Anita tower in a flash. The Anita tower had a total of 9 floors. The 9 floors were like 9 worlds. However, every single world had been destroyed. At the end of the shattered space, strands of sword qi hovered, preventing the 9 floors from regenerating automatically. Jianqin arrived at the boundary of the first floor. Before him was a dark, empty space. It was a destroyed world. He sat there and closed his eyes. He began to attempt to comprehend the sword qi left behind by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. In the past, he was unable to comprehend the sword qi due to his insufficient cultivation and strength. However, he was now a sword immortal, a primordial realm expert. Now that the Anita tower was about to leave him, he wanted to try one last time. However, very soon, Jianqin's body trembled violently, and his face became rather pale. He opened his eyes and stared at the sword qi with mixed feelings. He sighed helplessly inside. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt was just too powerful. As soon as he tried to comprehend it, he felt like the sword qi had come alive. It pierced his soul as countless strands of sword qi, causing his head to ache. He felt like his soul was about to be ripped apart. It still doesn't work. If I want to comprehend the sword qi, I probably need to reach Sword Sage at the very least. After all, the sword qi that the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt left behind in the past was originally meant for killing. Every single strand of sword qi is extremely aggressive, so it's obviously not as gentle as the imprint for passing on ways. Jianqin felt extremely regretful. He had only broken through to Sword Immortal recently, so he was just too far away from Sword Sage. Afterwards, he arrived on the 9th floor of the Inata Tower and stowed away the Fortune Jade. In the end, he left with the empty Inata Tower and arrived in the central region of the Prosper Plain through a teleportation formation. The central region was where the Heavenly Palace of Bishing resided. The Heavenly Palace of Bishing possessed supreme authority on the Prosper Plain. No one dared to defy them. The Heavenly Palace of Bishing was the center of the Prosper Plain. On this day, Jianqin arrived at the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. From afar, he saw a familiar golden hall. The hall stood there silently like an ancient hall. It seemed to possess a majestic power that could interfere with the laws of the world, causing all the laws of the world to revolve around the hall. As a result, the divine hall seemed to become the center of the world, the only thing in the world. This is the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. It's exactly the same as the projection of the divine hall I saw on the 9th floor of the Inata Tower. Jianqin was extremely shocked as he stared at the majestic divine hall. As a primordial realm expert, his senses were the strongest. Not only did he feel insignificant before the divine hall, but he also discovered to his surprise that as he rapidly approached the divine hall, his control and senses over the laws of the sword became weaker and weaker. It was as if the existence of the divine hall suppressed the 3,000 ways. Any cultivator who arrived before the divine hall would not be able to control the ways they had comprehended as they wished. Who goes there? At this moment, a divine general in golden armor appeared before Jianqin silently, blocking Jianqin's path. The divine general was a divine king, but the presence he gave off was no weaker than the supreme divine kings who sat on the divine king's throne. The Heavenly Palace of Bishing was one of the most powerful organizations in the Saints' world. Who knew how many experts wanted to join the Heavenly Palace of Bishing in the entire Saints' world? Even becoming a divine general was a great honor for a sect. As a result, every single divine general in the Heavenly Palace of Bishing was carefully selected from thousands of prodigies. Every single divine king was extremely powerful, coupled with the nurturing of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. These divine generals were known to be invincible among the same level of cultivation. I've come to return the Inata Tower. Jianqin directly took out the Inata Tower. Chapter 2496. The majestic Heavenly Palace of Bishing was extremely quiet. As Jianqin followed behind the divine general, he felt like the laws of the world were as vast as an ocean. It was as if the entire Heavenly Palace of Bishing had been forged from the laws of the world. Everything inside possessed the truths of the world, possessing endless mysteries. It was as if it had been created by nature. It really is worthy of being a peak god artifact in the world. Jianqin studied the Heavenly Palace of Bishing as he sighed in amazement inside. He had heard that the Inata Grand Exalt possessed 3 great treasures long ago. They were the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, the Inata Tower, and the Fortune Jade Seat. The Heavenly Palace of Bishing before him was a treasure on the same level as the Inata Tower. However, the Inata Tower was damaged and had been sealed up by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt Sword Chi, so it could no longer sense the might of the world from a peak god artifact. As a result, the shock that the Heavenly Palace of Bishing gave Jianqin was countless times greater than the Inata Tower. Sir Bishing, Jianqin has been brought here. The divine general from the Heavenly Palace of Bishing brought Jianqin to a majestic hall before speaking to the empty hall politely. You are dismissed. An obscure voice rang out in the empty hall. It was an old man who was brimming with energy. Yes, sir. The divine general bowed politely before retreating. Jianqin stood there calmly with the Inata Tower in hand. He glanced around, but he did not see anyone. Are you that Jianqin who has been running around with Master's treasure? The old voice rang out again. However, this time, the voice was no longer obscure. Instead, it rang out from behind Jianqin. Jianchen was shocked. He immediately turned around and saw that an old man in a white robe had appeared behind him. This old man's entire body was snow white. His gaze was deep and seemed to contain the power of the stars. He seemed to have the charm of a transcendent being. He silently stood behind Jianchen. Even with Jianchen's current strength, he was unable to detect the existence of this old man. Moreover, when his origin spirit swept over, there was nothing in front of him. It was as if this old man's existence could only be seen with the naked eye. All divine sense and perception had lost their effect. There's no need to investigate. You're too weak, so it's impossible for you to discover the old man's existence. If you want to sense the old man, you'll have to become a Grand Prime first. The old man stroked his long beard and said, rather confidently, "Senior, you are?" Jianchen cupped his fist and asked cautiously, "Old man Bishing, the hall spirit of this divine hall," said the old man. "So it's Senior Bishing. Greetings from Junior Jianchen." Jianchen clasped his fist. He looked at Bishing before looking at the Inata Tower in his hand. He hesitated. He had come to return the Inata Tower, but all he saw was an artifact spirit. He was naturally unwilling to hand something as important as the Inata Tower to an artifact spirit. Perhaps because he saw Jianchen's hesitation, Bishing snorted gently. With a wave of his hand, he turned his back to Jianchen and said rather proudly, "In the heavenly palace of Bishing, aside from Master and the Majesties, the old man is the most powerful. If you have any requests, feel free to state them." "Senior Bishing, I would like to see the First Majesty." Jianchen clasped his fist. He had already heard of the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing. She was a supreme expert who stood at the apex of the saints' world, an existence only second to grand exalts. Even if he wanted to return the Inata Tower, he had to hand it to the First Majesty personally. This was because the First Majesty was the one who called the shots in the heavenly palace of Bishing. She could command everyone and was an expert who could deter the entire saints' world. "Kid, although you've done a great service by returning a treasure to Master, who do you think the First Majesty is? Is she someone you can see just because you want to?" Bishing said with displeasure, "If I don't see the First Majesty, I won't return the Inata Tower." Jianchen said firmly. He did not back down at all, although he was in the heavenly palace of Bishing right now, where even his life was in the hands of others. He was not worried at all. This was because the heavenly palace of Bishing was a peak organization in the saints' world. The more powerful an organization was, the more they cared about their dignity. He had come so painstakingly to return the Inata Tower, so there was definitely no reason for the heavenly palace of Bishing to make things difficult for him. "Kid, the old man has already shown you enough respect by coming to see you personally. Don't be so ungrateful," Bishing frowned. He felt like he had been underestimated. "Bishing, you can leave." At this moment, a pleasant-sounding, yet icy-cold female voice rang out. A woman slowly walked over from the other side of the hall. The woman radiated with the presence of Ways. She was completely enveloped by a dazzling light. From the outside, only a hazy figure could be seen. It was impossible to make out her appearance. Jianchen's heart immediately shuddered when he saw the woman. Although he had never seen her appearance before, he could recognize her with a single glance. She was the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing Exen. In the past, his soul had once fused with a clone of the samsaric immortal exalt soul in the Neptunian divine palace. He had fought against the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing from the perspective of the samsaric immortal exalt. At that time, he was deeply shocked by the First Majesty's strength. The Tsangshuan Poseidon Palace was a high-quality god artifact. Its defenses were extremely shocking, and it had many powerful formations as well. Even so, it was unable to stop the First Majesty. In the end, the First Majesty broke through in an extremely short amount of time. She forced her way in from the outside and destroyed the clone of the samsaric immortal exalt. Although it was only a clone of the samsaric immortal Exalt, which was nowhere near as powerful as his original body, it was still a clone of a grand Exalt after all. This was more than enough to demonstrate just how terrifyingly powerful the First Majesty was. As a result, Jianqin became rather nervous when he faced the First Majesty. After all, the person before him was only a step away from becoming a Grand Exalt. As long as she took that step, she would become a sovereign of the world. This tower is my master's treasure. It was originally lost in a lower world, so it was impossible to find it. It was extremely difficult to find it. You've done a great service by bringing the tower here. Tell me, what do you want? Said the First Majesty. She slowly raised her slender finger, and with a casual gesture, the Inata tower in Jianqin's hand landed in her hand. Jianqin was unable to stop the Inata tower from leaving at all. First Majesty, may I ask what I can exchange for with this contribution? Jianqin asked. Xian held the Inata tower in her hand and studied it seriously as if she was studying the sword slashes on it. She said indifferently, various peak cultivation methods, ancient secret techniques, heavenly resources, and cultivation resources. As long as you can name it, our heavenly palace of Bishing can take it out. If you're interested, you can even use some of your contribution to join our heavenly palace of Bishing. Even your clan can move to the Prosper Plane and receive the protection of our heavenly palace of Bishing. It had to be mentioned that Xian's conditions were extremely tempting, especially the last one. Even a few peak organizations in the Saints' world would go crazy over it, back on the desolate plane. The reason why so many peak experts did everything they could to obtain the Inata Tower was because they wanted to personally return it to the heavenly palace of Bishing so that they could obtain merit and benefit their clans. This was because conflict existed everywhere in the Saints' world. Eternal empires could not truly exist forever, and peak clans could also face destruction. Even grand primes faced the danger of dying. Only by joining the organizations that stood at the peak of the Saints' world and obtaining their protection would they be able to continue their lineage. They would not have to worry about external enemies. As a result, the Inata Tower had attracted the attention of so many peak experts. I want the First Majesty to kill someone for me, Jianqin said with killing intent. Kill someone. Xian was surprised. That's right. Kill a Grand Prime. Jianqin slid his finger, and sword qi shot out from the tip of his finger. He used the sword qi to draw the Elder of Mountains and Sea's appearance in the air. He wanted to avenge Kea, but with the Elder of Mountains and Sea strength, he was not completely confident he could kill him even if he fused the twin swords. Moreover, he would expose himself as a result. As a result, it was best if he did not expose the twin swords if he could. The safest method was to ask the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing to take action. Killing the Elder of Mountains and Seas would be a piece of cake for the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. P.S. Xiaoyao has posted a picture of the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing on his public account. To those who want to see it, please pay attention to Xiaoyao's prestigious public account, Xingxingxiao 110. Pinyin is the pseudonym of Xinxing Xiaoyao. You can also find it by directly searching for the name Xinxing Xiaoyao on the public account. To those who do not know how to follow public accounts, you can open the contact list of your public account. You will see the menu for public accounts. You can click in, press the plus sign in the upper right corner, and then directly search for the public account mentioned above. Xiaoyao's public account had already been updated with many pictures. Replying to Xian would bring up the picture of the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing Xian. There were even more pictures of other people. They were all in historical information. To those who do not know how to find historical information, you can just reply to historical information. Chapter 2497. Xian glanced at the portrait of the Elder of Mountains and Seas casually. Although there were not a lot of Grand Primes in the Saints' world, there were still quite a few. Clearly, the Elder of Mountains and Seas was not enough to catch Exian's attention. As a result, she did not recognize the Elder of Mountains and Seas. However, she would not personally take action and kill for Jianchen either. She immediately declined without any hesitation. I won't kill anyone for you, although you've found Master's treasure, which is a great contribution. Don't even think about using it to make our heavenly palace of Bishing your butcher's blade. Please change your conditions. The first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing's words were very clear. Jianchen had returned the Inata Tower, which was a great merit, but this merit could only be exchanged for some cultivation resources or protection from the heavenly palace of Bishing. However, he could not turn the heavenly palace of Bishing into his weapon to kill for him or target certain people. Jianchen naturally understood what the first majesty was implying. He knew that it was impossible to get the experts of the heavenly palace of Bishing to take action, so he did not dwell on the topic. He continued, "This Grand Prime has an innate ability that can find me. I want to use some of my contribution to exchange for a way to avoid this ability. Sure, the heaven-splitting ancestor might move against me at some point in time. I hope the heavenly palace of Bishing can stop the heaven-splitting ancestor for me when he does. No problem. The heaven-splitting ancestor won't target you in the future. I want various cultivation methods, battle skills, ancient secret techniques, and cultivation resources. Sure. I'll send you to the Legacy Hall later. You can choose the various cultivation methods on the first and second floor. You can choose whatever you want. Your contribution will be deducted according to the level and value of the cultivation method. I want items that can kill Grand Primes. Do you think you can find treasures that can kill Grand Primes everywhere? You can only choose from the first and second floor, Exian said coldly. Very soon, Jianchen and Exian reached an agreement, and he was sent to the Legacy Hall by the artifact Spirit. It was unknown how many floors there were in the Hall of Inheritance, but Jianchen could only move about in the bottom 2 floors. On the first floor of the Hall of Inheritance, there were various cultivation techniques, battle skills, and secret techniques. On the second floor of the Hall of Inheritance, there were some arrays and divine artifacts. Jianchen selectively chose over 100 cultivation methods, battle skills, and secret techniques from the first floor of the Legacy Palace. Their ranks ranged from low to high. The only pity was that the cultivation methods on the first floor could only reach peak chaotic prime at best. He practiced the chaotic body, so these cultivation methods and secret techniques were useless to him. As a result, he requested the divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bishing to personally deliver these items and some cultivation resources to the Tianyuan family on the Cloud Plain. These were all prepared by him for the Tianyuan family. The Tianyuan family had only been founded recently, so their heritage was just too weak. With the resources from the heavenly palace of Bishing, the Tianyuan family could strengthen even more rapidly. Then he came to the second floor of the Hall of Inheritance, walked among the many array discs, and carefully chose the 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation. At this moment, Jianchen stopped before a set of formation banners. He looked at the introduction of the formation banners, and his eyes gradually lit up. The set of formation banners could create a powerful formation. It could use invisible flames to incinerate the mind and attack the souls of enemies, preventing them from defending against it. It could trap experts below the 7th heavenly layer of chaotic primes and slowly kill them. It can actually kill experts below the 7th heavenly layer of chaotic primes. Jianchen was immediately interested. Killing intent radiated from him. He wanted to avenge Kea, so the formation banners might be useful to a certain extent. At the same time, these were the most powerful formation banners he had seen on the second floor so far. He immediately stowed them away without any hesitation at all. However, to his pity, he had only found a single set of formation banners as powerful as the 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation. Jianchen had only exchanged for a single set of formation banners on the second floor. As for God artifacts, he still had all his God artifacts up for sale, so he naturally would not waste his precious merit on them. Moreover, the Tianyuan family did not need God artifacts for the time being. Several hours later, Jianchen emerged from the Hall of Inheritance and returned to the majestic hall. Of course, the Inata Tower was a peak God artifact, after all. Jianchen had received so much merit when he returned the Inata Tower that even if he exchanged for all the items here, he had only used half of it. I'll leave the remaining half of the merit here for now. I'll come back to exchange for it when I need something in the future, Jianchen said to the First Majesty after a moment of thought. Originally, he wanted to ask the Heavenly Palace of Bishing to protect his sister until she recovered. However, when he thought about the grievances his sister had with the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing many years ago from Shui Yunlan, he could only give up on that thought. In the past, the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing had been suppressed by his sister. Although he did not know whether the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing held a grudge or not, he would never risk his sister's life. Before long, Jianchen emerged from the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. The Inata Tower had left him, and a simple jade pendant appeared on him. It was engraved with the inscriptions of ways. The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing had left the jade pendant to him. It could prevent the innate abilities of the Elder of Mountains and Seas from searching for him. In addition, there was a large amount of cultivation resources in his interspatial ring. He did not ask the Heavenly Palace of Bishing to protect the Tianyuan family. He knew what his identity was, so he did not want the Tianyuan family to become too deeply connected to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. This was because he might leave the Saints' world with the Tianyuan family one day in the future. If the Heavenly Palace of Bishing protected the Tianyuan family, it would probably complicate the matter. Jianchen, I've been waiting for you here for a very long time. You've finally come to the Prosper Plane. At this moment, an old voice rang out from up ahead. Jianchen looked over and saw a familiar person standing there. She was an old woman. She wore simple clothes, and she seemed rather stooped. Her white hair draped down her back messily. Even though she seemed very old and her face was filled with wrinkles, her eyes were extremely bright. They shone brightly as if they possessed the tremendous power of the world. The old woman was Su Ran, who had parted with him on planet Tianming. Jianchen studied Su Ran, and a gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes. He clasped his fist and said, "Congratulations on recovering your cultivation, Senior. You've become a chaotic prime again. It's all thanks to your origin of ways that I was able to recover my cultivation and return to my peak condition," Su Ran said calmly. She stared right at Jianchen as if she was trying to see through him deeply. She wanted to see through Jianchen completely. "Jianchen, I can sense killing intent in you. A very powerful killing intent," continued Su Ran. "Kea is dead," Jianchen said sorrowfully. Chapter 2498. Su Ran's voluntary assistance did not make Jianchen happy at all. He shook his head gently and said the person who killed Kea was a Grand Prime. A Grand Prime. As expected, Su Ran frowned. Although she had recovered her cultivation and even reached a higher level compared to before, she was still a chaotic prime. The difference between her and a Grand Prime was just too great. After a moment of thought, Su Ran said to Jianchen, "The value of the Inata Tower is immeasurable. You've done a great service by returning the Inata Tower. It's enough to exchange for some formations that can deal with Grand Primes in the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Although they might not be able to kill Grand Primes, as long as they can keep Grand Primes busy, I might be able to kill them. Of course, that's assuming the Grand Prime's cultivation isn't too powerful. I can only go to the first and second floors of the Legacy Hall, so I only obtained a 9 Tribulations incineration formation that can kill 7th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Primes and below," said Jianchen. Su Ran's eyes lit up when she heard that. She said, "You actually obtained the 9 Tribulations incineration formation. If I had the 9 Tribulations incineration formation, I would be able to heavily injure a Grand Prime who isn't too powerful. Su Ran explained when she saw Genshin's surprise. Don't underestimate the 9 tribulations incineration formation. It's true that it can only kill 7th heavenly layer chaotic primes and below, but it's no ordinary formation. It's a wondrous killing formation that specializes in attacking the soul. Even the souls of some Grand Primes will be affected if they're trapped by it. Although the 9 tribulations incineration formation can't harm Grand Primes, as long as it can affect them, I'll be able to injure them from outside the formation. You can only injure them and not kill them. Genshin asked, Genshin, don't underestimate any Grand Primes. With my current cultivation and the 9 tribulations incineration formation, being able to injure Grand Primes is already extremely impressive. Killing them is basically impossible. Su Ran paused there before continuing. Of course, it's not impossible for you to kill Grand Primes. What is it? Genshin immediately asked. Seek outside help. Su Ran stared at Genshin deeply and said, There's a saying in the world of mortals that money can make the world go round. This saying as well. As a result, as long as you have enough wealth, you can ask the Myriad Bone Guild. The Myriad Bone Guild? Genshin was confused. He had never heard of the Myriad Bone Guild before. The Myriad Bone Guild is the most powerful assassination organization in the Saints' world. They have many assassins, ranging from Origin Realm experts to Grand Primes. As long as you're willing to pay a sufficient price, it's not impossible for you to ask the Grand Primes of the Myriad Bone Guild to kill for you, said Su Ran. Genshin's eyes lit up. He asked, Then, how much does it cost to ask the experts of the Myriad Bone Guild to kill Grand Primes for me? In terms of 5-colored divine crystals, killing a first heavenly layer Grand Prime will require 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals. The more powerful the target is, the more expensive it will be. Genshin gasped. 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals was an astronomical sum to him. After all, he had only obtained a few thousand 5-colored divine crystals from selling a low-quality god artifact on the spatial battleship on the Jade Fluid Plane. As for 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals, that was something Genshin did not even dare to think about. This was because even some weaker Grand Primes would not be able to take out 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals. This was because 5-colored divine crystals were just too precious. They were condensed from the presence of ways, so they contain the power of ways. They usually came from outer space and were truly wondrous items created by the world. They were not like regular divine crystals that could be mined in large quantities through mines. Although he had obtained a large number of resources through his contributions in the heavenly palace of Bishing, including many 5-colored divine crystals, it was still nowhere close to 1,000,000. Moreover, even if he gathered 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals, he would only be able to kill a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. Although Genshin did not know what heavenly layer the Elder of Mountains and Seas was exactly, he was certain that it was definitely not the first heavenly layer. However, we have the 9 tribulations incineration formation now, so we don't need to ask the Myriad Bone Guild to kill a Grand Prime. We just need to ask the experts of the Myriad Bone Guild to use their full strength and injure the person you want to kill. Leave the rest to me. Genshin, how many 5-colored divine crystals do you have right now? Su Ran asked Genshin. Around 100,000, said Genshin. He had obtained 100,000 5-colored divine crystals through his contributions in the heavenly palace of Bishing. Originally, he planned on leaving them for his sister to recover her cultivation. 100,000 is enough. Let's go. I'll take you to the Myriad Bone Guild. There's a branch on the Prosper Plain. The branch was located in a bustling city in the central region of the Prosper Plain. When Genshin saw the Myriad Bone Guild, it was just as its name suggested. It was a small building constructed from endless white bones. The small pavilion was only 3 stories high, and it was located in an extremely remote street. There were very few people on the street, causing this small pavilion made of piles of bones to give off a sense of gloom. Jianchen entered the branch with Su Ran. It was gloomy inside, and the power of a powerful formation circulated. Not only did it cut off all senses of the soul, but it even greatly affected one's vision. At this moment, darkness descended, and the entire myriad bone guild lost all its light. It was plunged into eternal darkness. Jianchen immediately felt like he had lost all his senses. He could not even see anything with his naked eyes. Jianchen knew that this was the power of the formation within the myriad bone guild. Who do you want to kill? What's their cultivation? A boy who seemed to be around 8 or 9 years old appeared before Jianchen in the darkness. The boy seemed to shine with a mysterious light, preventing the darkness from drowning him out. His figure was clearly visible in the darkness. Jianchen's eyes narrowed when he saw the boy. Even though the boy did not possess any energy at all, making him seem like an ordinary kid from next door, he was still able to sense the boy's presence. In his senses, the boy before him was like a cloud, unfathomable. We want the Myriad Bone Guild to send a first Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. We only need him to use his full strength once. Su Ran's voice rang out from the darkness, but Jianchen was no longer able to sense Su Ran's location at all. The power of the formation in the Myriad Bone Guild blocked all of his senses. All he could see was the boy's figure, using his full strength once, which is a single attack. 80,000 5-colored divine crystals, the boy said emotionlessly. Afterwards, Jianchen paid the 80,000 5-colored divine crystals, and the boy passed a jade talisman to him. He said, "When you need the Myriad Bone Guild to take action, you only need to activate this jade talisman. Remember, it only has the power of a first Heavenly Layer Grand Prime for a single attack. Then will your people be able to arrive in time when we activate the jade talisman?" Su Ran frowned. This process seemed to be rather different from the rumors. "There's no need to worry," the boy said coldly before vanishing. The darkness in the Bone Guild vanished, and everything returned to normal. Jianchen and Su Ran looked at each other. They looked at the jade talisman in their hands before looking at the empty Myriad Bone Guild. Without saying anything, they turned around and left. After the two of them left, the boy appeared silently. He stood in the Myriad Bone Guild, and his deep eyes seemed to be able to pierce space as he stared at Jianchen's back. It was also at this moment that a gray-clothed old man hurriedly ran down from the top of the Myriad Bone Guild. Several followers followed behind him. These attendants were all members who guarded this branch and were responsible for the operation of this branch. Chapter 2499. I've come here to see Jianchen. I want to see just what's different about him, the child said without even looking back. His voice was extremely indifferent. Jianchen. The old man behind the child became slightly confused. That young man earlier is the Jianchen who has the Inata Tower on him. He's the one who's been rumored to possess the saint's world. The child's gaze became extremely profound. He said the heavenly palace of Bishing actually knew about the appearance of the Inata Tower in the saint's world long ago. Logically speaking, they should have taken the Inata Tower back as soon as possible, but in reality they remained indifferent towards the appearance of the Inata Tower the entire time. They allowed the experts of the saint's world to fight over the Inata Tower. Originally, I was extremely confused about this as well. I had no idea what the heavenly palace of Bishing was up to. But now I finally know. The reason why the heavenly palace of Bishing allowed Jianchen to possess the Inata Tower was because the Inata Grand Exalt allowed it all to happen. What? The Inata Grand Exalt? The old man behind the child was immediately shocked when he heard that. Disbelief filled his face as he said, Didn't the Inata Grand Exalt die over 3 million years ago? I only received news from the Azure Pung recently that a 9th Majesty had appeared in the heavenly palace of Bishing. Since there's a ninth majesty, it means that the Anita Grand Exalt is still alive because all those who refer to themselves as majesties in the heavenly palace of Bishing are disciples of the Anita Grand Exalt. Only the old man could hear the boy's words. The members of the Myriad Bone Guild, standing behind the old man, couldn't hear anything at all. The old man sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He said, "I understand. This Jianqin is probably connected to the Anita Grand Exalt in some way. Our Myriad Bone Guild should do our best to befriend him in the future." Befriend him? The child crossed his arms as a smile gradually appeared on his face. However, the smile was filled with a sense of eeriness, no matter how one looked at it. It was chilling. The mist in the Tower of Radiance had completely dispersed, so the miniature world within the Tower of Radiance had become the safest place in the Radiant Saint Hall. In the Radiant Saint Hall, many of the Divine King's cultivations had actually reached the level where they could break through to late Divine King long ago. However, due to the threat of the mysterious expert, they did not dare to take this step. Now that the Tower of Radiance had become the best place of protection for the Radiant Saint Hall, the Divine King who had never dared to reach late Divine King all broke through, formally attaining late seven-colored soul core. It was exactly because of this that many Radiant God Kings had gathered in the Tower of Radiance. They were scattered everywhere, cultivating by themselves and comprehending the laws of the hallowed. They planned on spending a very long time here until they condensed soul trees and reached the primordial realm. Only then could they leave. Xianming had returned to the Radiant Saint Hall recently as well. He was also in the Tower of Radiance. As Xianming's father was one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall, he had become one of the people with the greatest status in the Tower of Radiance. He would always be surrounded by a few Divine King of Radiance, so he seemed like the moon surrounded by the stars. I really never thought that Brother Jianqin would actually be a member of the martial soul lineage. Xianming sighed emotionally in the Tower of Radiance. He had already learnt about Jianqin from the Divine King of Radiance. There was a lot of information about him. Humph, Xianming, you're actually working with a member of the martial soul lineage. Do you know your crimes? At this moment, a gateway to the miniature world in the Tower of Radiance suddenly opened. Gongsun Ji walked out with a sliver of arrogance on his face. He stared at Xianming coldly as if he was condemning him. Over 30 Divine King of Radiance followed behind Gongsun Ji. They were all the lords of the 99 main peaks of the Radiant Saint Hall, and some of them even possessed god artifacts. However, the lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak, Donglin Qiushui, was not among them. Gongsun Ji had already taken over the miniature world with his identity as the Grand Exalt's descendant, turning it into his personal territory. In the Tower of Radiance, only those who followed his lead had the right to cultivate in the miniature world. The lord of the Myriad Flower Peak, Donglin Qiushui, was unwilling to be led by Gongsun Ji. As a result, she left the miniature world and cultivated outside. Xianming naturally knew about Gongsun Ji's new identity, but he did not fear him at all. His face immediately sank, and he said coldly, "Gongsun Ji, do you think you're the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall? It's not up to you to tell me whether I've committed any crimes. Not only has Jianqin stolen the Grand Exalt's cultivation method of our Radiant Saint Hall, but he's also a member of the Radiant Saint Hall. Moreover, he's a member of the martial soul lineage. He's the greatest enemy of our Radiant Saint Hall. Anyone who has anything to do with Jianqin will be sentenced to death." "Men, capture Xianming," Gongsun Ji said coldly. The lords of the main peaks behind Gongsun Ji all hesitated, but very soon 8 of them made up their minds and charged toward Xianming. 3 of them even used their god artifacts. Xianming's father was one of the vice leaders, but Gongsun Ji was a descendant of a Grand Exalt. Even the leaders' attitude towards Gongsun Ji had clearly changed, so they believed that Gongsun Ji's current status clearly surpassed Xianming's father. "Gongsun Ji, stop!" The expressions of the divine king of radiance around Xian Ming changed drastically. However, Xian Ming's face sank. Cold light flickered in his eyes, and he showed no fear. The laws of the hallowed gathered around him. Clearly, he was about to take action as well. However, at this moment, the world within the Tower of Radiance suddenly began to shake violently. The ground shook, shaking up the entire world as if the end of the world had arrived. 9 sword-shaped mountains suddenly appeared in the sky. They hovered in the air like 9 sharp swords, shining with blinding light. From afar, they seemed like 9 scorching suns. The sudden occurrence alarmed all the divine king of radiance in the Tower of Radiance. Xian Ming and Gong Sun Ji's conflict came to an end because of that. Everyone raised their heads and stared at the 9 mountains in the sky. They had no idea what had happened. Look, there seems to be a sword stabbed into each of the 9 mountains. There really are swords stabbed into them. They're god artifacts at the very least. What terrifying pressure. The 9 swords definitely aren't of low quality. Many divine king of radiance cried out in the Tower of Radiance as they discussed the situation. At this moment, a thunderous voice boomed out. It reverberated through the surroundings, reaching every corner of the Tower of Radiance. Master had 9 retainers in the past. They were extremely powerful. They followed Master through outer space and made great contributions. After Master passed away, his 9 retainers did not live on by themselves. Instead, they used their innate secret techniques to condense their vital energies and condense their bodies and power into 9 swords. They were sealed here as protector swords, helping the next master of the Tower of Radiance conquer the world. As long as you wield the 9 swords, it's equivalent to wielding the power of the 9 retainers. This was the voice of the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance. All the divine king of radiance in the Tower of Radiance began to breathe heavily when they heard that. They stared at the protector sword stabbed into the 9 mountains with bloodshot eyes as their blood boiled. Gong Sun Ji was so excited that his entire body trembled. The master of the Tower of Radiance had summoned his 9 most powerful retainers. Chapter 2500. Sir Artifact Spirit has suddenly told us about the 9 swords. What is the meaning of this? Are you stupid? Can't you tell? Sir Artifact Spirit clearly wants to choose a master for the 9 swords. The 9 swords originated from the 9 retainers of the master of the Tower of Radiance in the past. The swords possess the power of the 9 retainers. If anyone can wield the 9 swords, doesn't that mean that even if they're just a divine king of radiance, they can immediately reach the level of peak experts and become an expert on the level of the leader of the Tower of Radiance? Heavens! Going from a radiant god king to a peak expert in a single move is basically a great fortuitous encounter for him to skyrocket. All the divine kings of radiance were in high spirits as they discussed excitedly. All of their eyes had become bloodshot. Gong Sun Ji no longer cared about Xian Ming. His entire face became extremely red as his breathing became abnormally heavy. He raised his head to the sky and roared out, "Artifact Spirit, your master is my ancestor. I am the only remaining bloodline of my ancestor. I am the only candidate to inherit the Tower of Radiance and become the master of the Tower of Radiance. I want you to hand over all 9 protector swords to me. I must choose who can wield the 9 swords." Gong Sun Ji's heart thumped heavily. He had never felt so excited before. Once he obtained the right to distribute the 9 protector swords, he had to wield the most powerful protector sword. Once I wield the strongest protector sword and the other 8 swords all accept me as their master and listen to my orders. Just how many people in the entire saints' world will I not dare to provoke? What will the radiant Saint Hall be in my eyes? Gong Sun Ji became extremely excited when he thought about this wonderful scenario. As soon as Gong Sun Ji said that he wanted the right to distribute the protector swords, the hearts of all the divine kings gathered their shivered. It was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over them, extinguishing the greed in many of their hearts. After all, Gongsun was the descendant of the master of the Tower of Radiance. In everyone's eyes, Gongsun was without a doubt the person with the greatest right to speak and influence the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance the most. With his identity as a descendant of the Grand Exalt, the artifact spirit might actually listen to him if he ordered the artifact spirit. After all, the miniature world that stored the Grand Exalt's legacy was the best proof. Donglin Qiushui's face sank. She was unwilling to listen to Gongsun. Her relationship with Gongsun had already worsened. Once Gongsun to distribute the right to distribute the 9 protector swords, it would be impossible for her. Compared to the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak's disappointment, the several dozen divine kings who followed Gongsun around all burned with desire. They all swore behind Gongsun that they would follow Gongsun from now on. Clearly, they all believed that Gongsun would obtain the right to distribute the 9 protector swords, so they all wanted to gain Gongsun recognition. They only wanted Gongsun to bestow a protector sword on them so that they could become peak experts in a single stroke. At the same time, 9 figures stood in the air at the entrance of the Tower of Radiance. Their presences were like dragons and elephants, and the laws of the hallowed revolved around them. They were extremely powerful. The 9 of them were the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, and the 8 vice leaders. Not only did the artifact spirit's voice echo through the Tower of Radiance, but it also informed a few authoritative figures of the Radiant Saint Hall about the 9 protector swords. I never thought that the Tower of Radiance would actually hide such powerful 9 protector swords. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall stared at the 9 mountains in the distance deeply. There had never been any records of the 9 protector swords in the history of the Radiant Saint Hall. The 9 protector swords really are very powerful. Just the presence they give off is enough to make me shiver. The 9 retainers were all 6 heavenly layer grand primes at the very least in the past, or even more. A vice leader behind the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall said sternly. His eyes were also burning with desire. The 9 protector swords were far more powerful than them, far more powerful than the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone has a chance to become the wielder of a protector sword. The protector swords exist specifically to protect the master of the Tower of Radiance. As a result, no matter who it is, as long as they inherit a protector sword, they must respect the master of the Tower of Radiance and fight for him. Now, immediately gather all the hallowed Saint Masters here. Regardless of their strength, regardless of their talent, as long as they have comprehended the laws of the hallowed, they can all come. The artifact spirit's voice rang out, echoing through the entire world. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall frowned. As soon as he heard that everyone had a chance to wield a protector sword, he could not help but be tempted. However, he was unable to accept the fact that all the wielder of a protector sword had to respect the master of the Tower of Radiance. After all, he was already a peak Grand Prime now. He naturally had his pride, so it was difficult for him to treat others with respect despite his status as a Grand Prime. If the master of the Tower of Radiance was a supreme expert or a Grand Exalt, he would not be so against it. However, based on the current situation, Gongsun might become the next master of the Tower of Radiance. Was he supposed to listen to Gongsun orders as the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall? Aside from Xianzhan, who still hesitated, the 7 vice leaders behind Yu Qin were all eager to give it a try. No, you can't do that. Artifact Spirit, you have to give me the authority to distribute the 9 protector swords. As the descendant of your ancestor, I order you to hand over the protector swords to me. Gongsun became flustered. The 9 protector swords protected the second master of the Tower of Radiance. Although he was a descendant of a Grand Exalt, he had not become the master of the Tower of Radiance yet. As a result, he needed to control the 9 protector swords. However, the artifact spirit completely ignored his roars. After all, the current artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance was the artifact spirit that had followed Genshin all the way up from the lower world. The protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall had all been activated outside the Tower of Radiance. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Qin, passed on the news of the Protector swords to all the elders as soon as possible. He ordered them to gather all the hallowed Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall and head to the Tower of Radiance. Yu Qin did not hide the news of the Protector swords because all the Divine King of the Tower of Radiance knew about it. Moreover, there was the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance as well. He could not hide it even if he wanted to. As a result, he directly announced the news of the Protector swords to the Radiant Saint Hall. Although the appearance of the 9 Protector swords might threaten his position as the ruler, the Radiant Saint Hall would also become the ruler of the Radiant Saint Hall. However, at the same time, the entire Radiant Saint Hall would become powerful with the appearance of the 9 Protector swords. It would become the greatest organization on the desolate plane, ruling over the entire plane. This was the general trend, so he could only go with the flow. The Lord of the Soaring Clouds, Peak, Han Xian, sat on the top of the mountain as he stared at the clouds in front of him in a daze. He was bleak, filled with loneliness and sorrow. He was originally a member of the Han family. Although his status in the clan was not great, he still had roots. However, in the end, because his new disciple, Changyang, was a member of the martial soul lineage, the patriarch of the Han family mercilessly kicked him out of the clan, reducing him to a loner. Chapter 2501. However, the matter did not end there. Ever since Genshin's identity was exposed, Han Xian was heavily implicated as well. As a result, his status in the Radiant Saint Hall plummeted day by day. Many divine kings who were usually on good terms with him now treated him like he was the plague. They stayed as far away from him as possible. Occasionally, there would even be some divine kings who had conflicts with Han Xian who would directly come to the Soaring Clouds, Peak, to provoke him. They would mock him, showing no mercy at all. This was because, in the eyes of many people, Han Xian was already a criminal of the Radiant Saint Hall. Taking in a member of the martial soul lineage was punishable by death in the Radiant Saint Hall. Even if Han Xian had no idea about Genshin's identity, he would still be punished. However, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall did not interrogate Han Xian all this time, which was why Han Xian was able to maintain his status as the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak until now. However, in everyone's eyes, the day when Han Xian would be interrogated was not far away. At this moment, a powerful sense of the soul swept over, sending a message to all the divine kings in the region where Han Xian resided. Han Xian's eyes lit up slightly, but they dimmed very soon. He murmured, "Protector swords? What does that have to do with me?" Han Xian immediately lost interest. He knew that it was impossible for him to gain the recognition of a protector sword. However, after a slight hesitation, he said, "Baiyu, come see your master quickly." Before long, Baiyu flew to the top of the mountain with Radiant Saint Force. She stood behind Han Xian and bowed, "Greetings to teacher." Baiyu was still as beautiful as ever, her white robe wrapped around her body, perfectly outlining her exquisite figure. Her long black hair danced wildly in the wild wind on the mountain peak, causing her figure to look incomparably elegant. The only flaw was that there was always a faint trace of worry on her face, which made her look much more haggard than before. In the past few years, the status of the Soaring Clouds Peak in the Radiant Saint Hall had rapidly declined due to the matter with Genshin. Even Baiyu was affected, so she had not been doing well in the past few years. She was the only one left of the 3 great disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak. "Baiyu, I've just received a message from the elders. 9 protector swords have appeared in the Tower of Radiance. Whoever obtains a protector sword will become a peak expert." "You can go and try," said Han Xian. "Teacher, this disciple's aptitude is lacking. I'm afraid that I don't have the qualifications to obtain a protector sword," Baiyu said calmly without the slightest hint of joy. "Baiyu, don't underestimate yourself. There aren't many people in our Radiant Saint Hall who can become a hallowed Saint Master with a 2-colored soul core," Hanyu said. Bai Yu sighed gently when she heard that. Her eyes became gloomy. Only she knew that her talent was not particularly outstanding. The reason why she could become a hallowed Saint Master with a two-colored soul core was probably all thanks to her second senior brother. This was because she had comprehended the laws of the hallowed by her second senior brother's side and become a hallowed Saint Master gloriously. However, ever since she left her second senior brother, without him to explain things to her, her progress in the past few years was basically insignificant. As a matter of fact, it could be described as nothing at all. Go. You're the pride of our Soaring Clouds Peak. If you can obtain a Protector Sword, the status of our Soaring Clouds Peak will skyrocket. We won't have to worry about people inciting us anymore, Han Xian encouraged. Yes, teacher. Bai Yu could not bear to disappoint Han Xian when she saw how haggard he was, so she could only agree reluctantly. She did not even consider the 9 Protector Swords because she knew it was impossible. The Donglin clan was one of the peak organizations on the Desolate Plain, but it was indeed the weakest one. This was because the ancestor of the Donglin clan, Donglin Su, was a Grand Prime who had only broken through recently. He was currently a first Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. However, even with that being the case, the Donglin clan still possessed a certain amount of authority on the Desolate Plain. At this moment, Donglin Yen Shui sat in a pavilion in the garden of the Donglin clan. She placed a zither on the stone table before her as she played it. In the past, ever since Genshin's identity was exposed, Donglin Yen Shui had been brought back to the clan by the ancestor of the Donglin clan, and she had never visited the Radiant Saint Hall again. As there was no formal trial, and the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall did not officially strip her of her status as chosen saint, she was still the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked over. He looked at Yen Shui gently and said, "Yen Shui, your master just sent me a message. He said that there's a great, fortuitous encounter in the Radiant Saint Hall, and he wants you to go there as soon as possible." The middle-aged man was Donglin Yen Shui's father, the current patriarch of the Donglin clan, Donglin Xiong. Donglin Yen Shui stopped playing the zither. She asked in doubt, "Fortuitous encounter? Father, what's the exact matter?" "I don't know the exact details either. However, your master, Mu Shui, will never harm you. Just go. With the clan supporting you, the Radiant Saint Hall won't make things difficult for you," said Donglin Xiong. With that, Donglin Yen Shui stood up and stowed the zither away. She slowly made her way out of the pavilion. When she passed by Donglin Xiong, she paused slightly and said after some hesitation, "Father, I acted willfully in the past and helped Genshin escape, offending the Radiant Saint Hall as a result. Has the clan not blamed me at all?" Donglin Xiong chuckled. "Protecting you was the ancestor's intentions. The ancestor is not short-sighted like those people. He could tell long ago that Genshin was an extraordinary person. People like him can only be befriended, not offended. As a result, not only did the ancestor not blame you when you helped Genshin escape, but he even praised you more than once. That's because Genshin is indebted to you. If Genshin succeeds in the future, he'll definitely repay you." Many Radiant Saint Masters had already gathered outside the Tower of Radiance in the sacred hall that stood above the clouds. The Radiant Saint Masters varied in cultivation, but without any exception, they were all hallowed Saint Masters who had comprehended the laws of the hallowed. At this moment, they all stared at the Tower of Radiance, excitedly as they studied it carefully. Isn't that Bai Yu from the Soaring Clouds Peak? You actually have the face to come here?" At this moment, a voice filled with surprise and mockery suddenly rang out. A young man was pointing at the white jade with a cold sneer on his face. Bai Yu stood in the crowd and gritted her teeth silently. She remained silent as stubbornness filled her eyes. Who knew how many times she had heard similar voices in the past few years? She had cried, grieved, hurt, and despaired. She had already become accustomed to it. "What? Bai Yu, Do you want the Protector Sword to accept you as its master? Are you certain you have the ability? Bai Yu, you're related to the martial soul lineage. Do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will let you inherit the Protector Sword? Ha ha ha, Bai Yu, you're actually bold enough to enter the Tower of Radiance. Jian Chen of the martial soul lineage stole the supreme legacy of our Radiant Saint Hall right under Sir Artifact Spirit's nose. And you're related to Jian Chen. Do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will kill you out of anger after you enter the Tower of Radiance? That does make sense now that you mention it. Everyone, do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will kill Bai Yu after she enters the Tower of Radiance? Many hallowed Saint Masters sneered in the surroundings. Chapter 2502. At this moment, a group of elders from the Radiant Saint Hall arrived near the Tower of Radiance as well. Their arrival immediately made the surroundings fall silent. Even the hallowed Saint Masters, who were insulting Bai Yu, shut their mouths. As for Bai Yu, she immediately saw her former master, Mu Shui, among those elders. In the past, she was only a nameless disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. It was Mu Shui who had come to the Soaring Clouds Peak to take her in as a disciple and bring her into the Sacred Hall. From then on, her status skyrocketed, becoming the disciple of an elder that everyone envied. But at the same time, it was Mu Shui who expelled her, severing their relationship as master and disciple. Bai Yu had fallen from heaven to hell in a single instance. Bai Yu's gaze became mixed as she looked at Mu Shui's once friendly face. After a moment of hesitation, she pushed through the crowd and arrived before Mu Shui. She bowed, "Master." Bai Yu's actions attracted the gazes of all the elders. However, without any exception, all of their eyes were cold. Mu Shui's eyes were cold as well. She stared at Bai Yu emotionlessly and said, "Bai Yu, it's actually not suitable for you to come here. Also, I've stopped being your master a long time ago. You should call me elder." Bai Yu's heart immediately chilled when she heard Mu Shui's cold words. Her eyes reddened as tears filled her eyes. She could endure the mockery from the hallowed Saint Masters in the surroundings, but she could not ignore the words of her former master. The coldness and mercilessness of Mu Shui was like a steel needle that pierced her heart, causing her to feel incomparable pain. "Look, Donglin Yan Shui has actually come as well." "What? Donglin Yan Shui? That traitor who helped the martial soul lineage actually has the face to return." At this moment, a series of discussions rang out, and the crowd surged. She wore the robes of a radiant Saint Master and possessed an otherworldly bearing. The beautiful Donglin Yan Shui slowly made her way over from the crowd. Wherever she passed by, the hallowed Saint Masters in the surroundings would move aside, automatically opening up a path for her. Donglin Yan Shui naturally heard the discussions around her, but she didn't care at all. She appeared calm and unruffled. In the end, she arrived in front of Mu Shui and bowed to her. She opened her mouth and said, "Master, Yan Shui, you've come." Looking at Donglin Yan Shui, Mu Shui revealed a faint smile. Although Donglin Yan Shui had also helped Jian Chen, Donglin Yan Shui was far more guilty than Bai Yu. However, Mu Shui's attitude toward Donglin Yan Shui was completely different. "You have to do your best to obtain the Protector Sword's master this time. Once you gain the recognition of the Protector Sword and grasp its power, no one in the Radiant Saint Hall will dare to say anything to you anymore," Mu Shui said gently. Donglin Yan Shui's eyes lit up and she nodded slightly. "A Protector Sword." To another side, Bai Yu clenched her fists tightly. Originally, she had no interest in a Protector Sword, but she had already had enough of being targeted and suppressed by her seniors and juniors in the past few years. Now that she heard about how useful a Protector Sword would be, her heart began to burn with desire. "Although it's basically impossible for me to obtain a Protector Sword with my talent, I have to do my best," Bai Yu swore inside. Before long, the leader and the 8 vice leaders appeared outside the Tower of Radiance together. The 9 of them worked together to open the Grand Exalt's formation around the Tower of Radiance and ordered all the hallowed Saint Masters to enter. Opening a Grand Exalt's formation required 2 vice leaders at the very least, and it could not be opened for too long. However, due to the fact that there were just too many hallowed Saint Masters entering this time, the Grand Exalt's formation needed to be opened for a very long time. As a result, the leader and the 8 vice leaders had to take action together. With the Grand Exalt's formation activated, all the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there charged into the Tower of Radiance as quickly as they could. As they constantly flickered, the number of hallowed Saint Masters in the hall rapidly decreased. Finally, after several hours, all the hallowed Saint Masters had entered the Tower of Radiance. Even the elders of the Radiant Saint Hall did not fall behind. The huge palace that was originally packed with people had now become empty. Let's go in as well. Let's see who will gain the recognition of a protector's sword in the end, said the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. Afterwards, he vanished with the 8 vice leaders, entering the Tower of Radiance as well. All the hallowed Saint Masters had gathered in the Tower of Radiance. There were several 100,000 of them. There were over 1 million disciples in the Radiant Saint Hall, but not all of them had comprehended the laws of the hallowed. As a result, basically all the hallowed Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall had gathered there. After all, the protector's swords represented an opportunity to rise up in a single step. Everyone was tempted. There were definitely not a lot of exceptions like Han Exen. All the hallowed Saint Masters sat on the ground as they stared at the 9 mountains in the sky curiously. They were filled with burning interest. With the 9 swords, you will become the master of the Tower of Radiance's subordinates. You will only be able to fight for the master of the Tower of Radiance in the future. The artifact spirit's voice boomed through the surroundings. It was as deafening as thunder. The artifact spirit repeated the origins of the protector swords. After warning them seriously, it called out, "If anyone is unwilling, you can withdraw right now. Otherwise, once you wield a protector sword, if you don't obey the master's orders in the future, you will be devoured by the power of the protector's swords and die." The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, sighed gently when he heard that. With a single movement, he left. Clearly, he did not plan on taking part in the fight for the protector swords. Xian Zhan, one of the 8 vice leaders, hesitated slightly before making up his mind in the end. He also left with Yu Chen. As for the remaining 7 deputy palace masters, their eyes were filled with burning desire. It was obvious that they wanted to obtain the Guardian's sacred sword. "I wonder how I can obtain the protector swords," Donglin Yanxue thought as she looked at the protector sword stabbed into the 9 mountains. This was because the strength of the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there was completely unequal. If they competed for the protector swords with their own strength, it would clearly be unreasonable. Who would be able to compete against the 7 vice leaders? Artifact Spirit, did you hear that? Give the 9 protector swords to whoever I tell you to, Gong Sunji growled. His face was sunken as he became extremely agitated. This was because he discovered that the artifact spirit did not seem to take him, the descendant of a Grand Exalt, seriously. The 9 protector swords represented the power of 9 peak experts. He hoped that all the people who wielded the protector swords would fall into his hands. At this moment, the 9 mountains in the sky suddenly shone brightly. The light was almost tangible, shining down and enveloping all the hallowed Saint Masters seated below. Immediately, all the people who were enveloped by the white light lost all their senses. All they could see was whiteness. Even the senses of their souls were unable to expand. Even someone as powerful as the Vice Palace Master was the same. This was because this was the power of the 9 protector swords. It was not something that they could contend against. Within the white light, Baiyu sat cross-legged. She was both nervous and uneasy. "You're called Baiyu?" At this moment, a gentle voice rang out in her head. In front of Baiyu, a middle-aged man appeared without a sound. Chapter 2503. Looking at the middle-aged man who had silently appeared in front of her, Bayou felt that this middle-aged man seemed to have fused with the white light shining down from the 9 mountains, becoming the only existence in this vast white world. However, in the next moment, Bayou's heart skipped a beat. At that moment, she could not see anything else apart from the middle-aged man. She could vaguely guess the middle-aged man's identity, and she immediately became nervous and uneasy. "Who are you?" The middle-aged man smiled warmly. He seemed extremely friendly and said, "You must have guessed my identity from your reaction. I am the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance." After her identity was confirmed, Bayou's face immediately turned pale. She subconsciously took a step back, and her heart turned cold. The artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance was a godlike existence in Bayou's eyes. He was supreme, and all the divine king and elders of the Radiant Saint Hall had to lower their heads. They had to refer to him as Sir, or Senior, politely. He was truly an unreachable existence. However, such a supreme existence had actually come to find her. Bayou immediately connected this to what the divine King of Radiance had said. Was the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance really trying to kill her because of her relationship with her second senior brother? After all, not only was her second senior brother a member of the martial soul lineage, but he was also the greatest enemy of the Radiant Saint Hall. Moreover, he had entered the Tower of Radiance and taken away the supreme legacy here. He had taken away the most important thing here. "You don't need to be nervous. I have no ill intentions," said the middle-aged man. Afterwards, he extended his finger gently, and 2 stone stools and a stone table immediately rose up from the ground. He sat down on one of the stone stools before pointing at the other one to Bayou. He said, "Let's sit down and talk." The artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance had personally shown up and specially prepared a stone stool for Bayou. If any other divine King of Radiance saw this, they would be stunned. This was because even Gong Sunji, a descendant of the Grand Exalt, did not receive such treatment. In reality, let alone Gong Sunji, even the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall and the 8 vice leaders had never seen the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance. They had only heard its voice. Bayou hesitated as she looked at the stone bench before her. She was rather confused about what the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance was trying to do. But in the end, she still made her way over uneasily and sat down. "Your second senior brother's true identity is a member of the martial soul lineage. Do you hate him for lying to you for so long?" The artifact spirit said calmly. It was impossible to tell what she was feeling. Bayou was silent for a moment. Then she gritted her teeth and mustered her courage to say, "I don't hate him. No matter what his identity is, he has always been the one who treats me the best." The artifact spirit glanced at Bayou deeply. Without saying anything, it suddenly vanished. In the next moment, all the divine King of Radiance gathered in the Tower of Radiance felt the ground shake violently. A suffocating, terrifying energy suddenly permeated the surroundings. Accompanying it was the clear thrum of a sword that ripped through the surroundings. All the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there clearly saw an extremely bright streak of white light fall from the sky, disappearing in a flash. "It's a protector sword. It's a protector sword. Someone has already gained the recognition of a protector sword. Who is it? Who is this person?" The hearts of all the hallowed Saint Masters began to thump heavily. A protector sword represented an opportunity to reach the heavens in a single stroke. Since someone had obtained a protector sword, it meant that no matter what their cultivation was, they would become a peak expert in the future. They would become a supreme figure in the Radiant Saint Hall. In the distance, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chun, and the vice leader, Xian Zhan, stood with their hands behind their backs. They stared at the region enveloped by white light. "Someone has already obtained a protector sword," said the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. His feelings were mixed. He had no idea whether he was happy or worried. It doesn't matter who has obtained a protector sword. It means that the strength of our Radiant Saint Hall has risen to a whole new level, Xianzhan said emotionlessly. The region was enveloped by the power of the Protector Sword, coupled with the interference of the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance. The two of them were unable to see what was happening within the white light, even with their strength. They had no idea who had obtained the Protector Sword. On the other hand, Baiyu felt a flash of light in front of her eyes as a long sword that gave off a dazzling radiance suddenly appeared before her eyes. The sword was around 1 meter long and 2 fingers wide. It was simple in shape and was filled with the presence of time. The energy it contained was so great that it was earth-shaking. At this moment, there was a flash of light. Before Baiyu could even return to her senses, her finger had been cut open by the sword, and a droplet of blood was absorbed by the sword. Afterwards, to her surprise, she discovered that a profound mental connection had already been established between her and the sword. The 4th Protector Sword, Cliff's sword. Baiyu murmured softly. She discovered that she could communicate with the sword in front of her, and she instantly learned the sword's name. Baiyu's eyes immediately lit up. She was so excited that she struggled to contain herself. She struggled to believe that this was real. The sword before her was actually a Protector Sword, and it was the one that ranked forth out of the 9 Protector Swords, Cliff Sword. Henceforth, you are the master of Devilcliff's sword. Devilcliff's sword was not forged from any material. Instead, it was created by Devilcliff, ranked fourth among the 9 retainers. This sword is Devilcliff, and Devilcliff is the sword. However, Cliff has already become the artifact spirit. You can communicate with the artifact spirit, and you can unleash the power of Cliff's sword through the artifact spirit. At the same time, the artifact spirit's voice rang out in Baiyu's head. Donglin Yen Shui, have you ever regretted helping Jianqin of the martial soul lineage escape? The artifact spirit appeared before Donglin Yen Shui and asked her a question. I don't regret it. If I could turn back time and face that scene again, I would still make the same choice, Donglin Yen Shui said without any hesitation. Jianqin's figure had already been imprinted in her heart. The artifact spirit nodded before vanishing. In the next moment, a second thrum rang out. A protector sword fell with devastating power, hovering before Donglin Yen Shui. This sword is Yuenya's sword. It ranks 3rd among the 9 protector swords. It was left behind by Yuenya of the 9 retainers. Before long, a 3rd protector sword fell and hovered before Xianming. A protector sword. It's actually a protector sword. I never thought I would be fortunate enough to obtain a protector sword. Ha ha ha, the 8th ranked protector sword. From today onwards, I'll be relying on you to gain a foothold in the Saints' world. You are the most important treasure in my life. In just a short amount of time, 3 protector swords had already fallen, which made the hallowed Saint Masters who had yet to obtain a protector sword uneasy. They were extremely nervous. Artifact spirit, get out here. Gongsun Ji bellowed to another side. His face was extremely vicious. 3 of the 9 protector swords had already fallen. None of them belonged to people he could control, which made him furious. Chapter 2504. Clearly, Gongsun Ji's roars were useless. The artifact spirit directly ignored him. This was because the current artifact spirit was no longer the artifact spirit of the past. His identity as a descendant of a grand exalt was useless. At this moment, the 4th streak of light shot down. Another protector sword shot down from the mountain as a dazzling streak of light. The 4th protector sword was about to choose a master. However, the protector sword did not land in the region enveloped by white light. Instead, it turned into a bolt of lightning and shot towards the exit of the Tower of Radiance. In the distance, the eyes of the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, and vice leader Xianzhan narrowed. They could clearly see a protector sword descend and fly towards them as a streak of white light. It moved extremely quickly. In a single moment, The fourth protector sword crossed the distance and hovered before Xianzhan. It flickered with light. Xianzhan was confused as he stared at the simple protector sword that possessed astonishing power. For a moment, he was unable to understand what was going on. Even the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Qin, was stunned. This was because both he and Xianzhan had clearly withdrawn from the competition for the protector sword. They were very surprised by the fact that the protector sword had actually come to them voluntarily. This protector sword comes from the 9th ranked retainer, Kai Ming. Since Kai Ming's sword has chosen you, it means you're fated with Kai Ming. Are you willing to wield Kai Ming's sword and fight for the master of the Tower of Radiance? The artifact spirit's voice rang out in Xianzhan's head. Xianzhan did not become excited with the protector sword before him. Instead, he hesitated slightly before asking, "Will the master of the Tower of Radiance be Gongsun Ji?" "He has no right to become my master," said the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance. Xianzhan made up his mind when he heard that. He said, "All right, since the next master of the Tower of Radiance isn't Gongsun Ji, I will accept the 9th protector sword and become its wielder." As soon as he finished speaking, the 9th saint sword flashed with light. It cut open his finger at a speed that even Xianzhan could not react to, absorbing some of his blood. When Yu Qin, who was standing beside him, saw this scene, a glint flashed across his eyes. He stared at the protector's sword without blinking as he revealed a pondering expression. At the same time, the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance stood on the top of one of the 9 mountains in the Tower of Radiance, silently watching the hallowed Saint Masters below. Bai Yu, Donglin, Yan Shui, Xianzhan, and Xianming have all obtained a protector sword. Only Han Xian remains. Han Xian was once Master's teacher. Before Master left, he specially told me to take good care of Han Xian. However, Han Xian didn't enter the Tower of Radiance. Moreover, the remnant consciousness of the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance has always been influencing me. It wants to assimilate me and turn me into its past self. I don't know how much longer I can remain clear-headed, so I need to bestow all these protector swords to Master's friends while I'm still clear-headed. The artifact spirit murmured. After a moment of hesitation, he sent a message to the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall secretly, telling him to gather all the hallowed Saint Masters who had yet to enter the Radiant Saint Hall. After receiving the message from the artifact spirit, Yu Qin did not hesitate at all. He immediately left the Tower of Radiance. Before long, Yu Qin entered the Tower of Radiance with over 100 hallowed Saint Masters. These hallowed Saint Masters all knew that they had no fate with the protector swords. As a result, they had no interest in the protector swords at all. To no surprise, the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, was among them. Under Yu Qin's orders, the hallowed Saint Masters all entered the region enveloped by white light. Swish! However, soon after they entered, there was a whistling sound. The 5th protector sword flew down from the mountain with a clear thrum, landing in Han Xian's hand. Out of the 9 protector swords, Hades' sword ranked 5th. From today onwards, you are the wielder of Hades' sword. An obscure voice rang out in Han Xian's head. Han Xian became stunned as he looked at the protector sword hovering before him and sensed the obscure connection he had established with it. He felt like he was dreaming. A lot of information regarding Hades' sword appeared in his head. Among the 9 retainers of the Master of the Tower of Radiance, Hades ranked 5th. He was a 7th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. The sword originated from Hades. As the wielder of the sword, he basically controlled all of Hades' power. As long as he possessed the sword, even if he was only the Divine King of Light, his battle prowess would truly reach the peak. He would be able to take on Grand Primes. Even some weaker Grand Primes would not be his opponent. The current strongest ancestor of the Han family was only a 9th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Prime, while the Patriarch who had expelled him was only an Infinite Prime. However, the power he possessed right now was no weaker than a Grand Prime. Han Xan felt like he was dreaming. It did not feel real. I am a descendant of a Grand Exalt. My ancestor was your former master, the artifact spirit. I don't want the right to distribute the protector swords. I only want the most powerful protector sword. Gongsun, Ji roared out from afar. He began to panic as he watched the protector swords fall one after another, but he still did not get a share. He wanted the most powerful protector sword. A protector sword was equivalent to skyrocketing. Regardless of whether he would become the master of the Tower of Radiance in the future, he had to obtain one of the protector swords. The artifact spirit glanced at Gongsun Ji coldly from the top of the mountain before no longer paying any attention to him. Gongsun Ji's resentment towards Jianqin was just too deep. He would never let Gongsun Ji inherit a protector sword. If it weren't for the lingering consciousness of the artifact spirit from the Tower of Radiance, you wouldn't be able to possess the miniature world for yourself, the artifact spirit thought. He was no longer the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance in the past, so he had no feelings for the descendant of the previous master of the Tower of Radiance at all. Out of the 9 protector swords, the greatest one is Godslayer's sword. It was transformed from the strongest of the 9 retainers, Godslayer. Godslayer was a 9th heavenly layer Grand Prime when he was alive, so this sword is the most powerful out of the 9 protector swords. This sword should be left for Master's mother. The artifact spirit looked at the sword stabbed into the ground behind him. He had already decided on who the first protector sword belonged to. However, at this moment, the artifact spirit's body suddenly began to tremble violently. His body that had been condensed from energy had almost collapsed. In his eyes, 2 completely different gazes flickered. It was as if 2 completely independent thoughts and consciousnesses were engaged in an intense battle. The lingering consciousness of the artifact spirit from the Tower of Radiance appeared once again, engaging in an intense battle with the artifact spirit. He wanted to assimilate the artifact spirit. Your era has already become a thing of the past. It's impossible for you to assimilate me, the artifact spirit growled. His figure would blur and clear at times. He was extremely unstable, but in the end his eyes lost their original light, replaced by a completely unfamiliar coldness. As a result, his eyes seemed emotionless. Godslayer's sword should be controlled by Master's descendant. The artifact spirit said coldly. He extended a finger towards the protector, sword behind him gently. Immediately, the first protector sword stabbed into the ground, directly shot into the air, and landed in Gongsun Ji's hand. Chapter 2505 Godslayer's Sword. I've obtained the first protector's sword, Godslayer's sword. Ha ha! Gongsun Ji could not help but laugh aloud as he grasped Godslayer's sword and sensed the information from it. It was also at this moment that the white light from the 9 mountains vanished. All the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there were revealed as well. The 9 mountains that hovered in the sky were submerged in space again, vanishing without a trace. What's going on? Where are the 9 mountains? The mountains have vanished. Has the selection of the protector swords come to an end? There were clearly 9 protector swords, so why did it end when 6 were missing? Have none of us been chosen by the protector swords? Immediately, a noisy discussion rang out in the surroundings. Many of the hallowed Saint Masters who had not been chosen by the protector swords expressed their reluctance. Their eyes were gloomy as they felt dejected. At this moment, 5 bright streaks of light shone over. They were as dazzling as the sun. All the hallowed Saint Masters looked over, and they saw a scene that made all of them jealous with a single glance. 5 protector swords hovered in the air, standing between Donglin and Yan Shui. A layer of pure light descended from above by you, Han Xan, Xianming, and Gongsun Ji, enveloping the 5 of them. Without even thinking about it, everyone knew that the 5 of them had obtained 5 protector swords. Isn't that by you from the soaring clouds peak? Bai Yu has actually obtained the recognition of a protector sword. Heavens, am I seeing things? Bai Yu only has a 2-colored soul core, yet she can obtain a protector sword. This isn't fair. Han Xan has actually obtained the recognition of a protector sword as well. The only 2 people left on the Soaring Cloud's peak have both obtained protector swords. This is unbelievable. The Soaring Cloud's peak has truly soared up. From today onwards, no one will be bold enough to speak ill of the master and disciple of the Soaring Cloud's peak. Donglin Yen Shui has actually obtained a protector sword as well. She helped Jianqin of the martial soul lineage escape in the past. She's a sinner of our Radiant Saint Hall. How can a protector sword choose her? Cries of surprise rang out in the surroundings. Many people were unable to accept the fact that Han Xian, Bai Yu, and Donglin Yen Shui had obtained a protector sword. In particular, the hallowed Saint Masters who had mocked Bai Yu in the past or tried to sow discord between them paled when they saw Bai Yu obtain a protector sword. The Sacred Hall's elder, Mu Shui, stared at Bai Yu without blinking. Her heart was extremely uneasy. Bai Yu was originally her disciple, but because of her relationship with Jianqin, she was ruthlessly expelled from the sect. However, she never expected that Bai Yu would have the opportunity to obtain a guardian saint sword. Looking at the ancient long sword floating above Bai Yu's head, Mu Shui suddenly felt a burst of bitterness in her heart. At that moment, she suddenly thought of just how much glory she would receive if Bai Yu was still her disciple. Just how much would her status in the Radiant Saint Hall rise through Bai Yu? Sigh. Mu Shui sighed gently inside. She knew that her relationship with Bai Yu was probably irreparable. It would never return to how it was in the past. This was because Bai Yu had already become an important figure in the Radiant Saint Hall. With her protector sword, her status and right to speak had completely surpassed her as an elder. Donglin Yen Shui, you traitor, you actually have the face to come here? Suddenly a voice rang out. Gong Sunji also discovered that Donglin Yen Shui had actually obtained the recognition of a protector sword. Cold killing intent immediately filled his eyes. Gong Sun Ji truly hated Donglin Yen Shui to the core. If she had not helped Jianqin escape in the past, it was extremely likely for the Grand Exalt's cultivation method to end up in his hands. That was a Grand Exalt's cultivation method. Just how many people in the entire Saints world could withstand that? Once he obtained the cultivation method, his future accomplishments would be limitless. In the end, it was because of Donglin Yen Shui that he missed out on the cultivation method. Gong Sun Ji's fury was unimaginable. Gong Sun Ji, you may be the divine king of light, and your cultivation is greater than mine, but we both wield protector swords. Our statuses are on par. You no longer have the right to judge whether I'm a traitor or not. Donglin Yen Shui replied coldly. Now that she wielded a protector sword, she was filled with confidence. How dare you? Gong Sun Ji bellowed out. He immediately ordered all the hallowed Saint Masters gathered in the surroundings to move away before swinging his protector sword towards Donglin Yen Shui. However, when he swung his protector sword halfway, it came to a halt in the air. No matter how hard Gong Sun Ji tried, he was unable to make the protector sword slash down. It was as if the protector sword was no longer under Gong Sun Ji's control. Gong Sun Ji, you're the last one to obtain a protector sword. You probably haven't digested the information from the protector sword yet. The 9 retainers of the Master of the Tower of Radiance once went through life and death together. They've already become sworn brothers, so it's impossible for them to fight against each other. As the wielder of a protector sword, if we attack them with our protector swords, we'll suffer great resistance from the protector sword. Donglin Yen Shui said coldly. Gong Sun Ji's face sank when he heard that. At this moment, he had just finished digesting the information from the protector sword. Just as Donglin Yen Shui had said, the protector swords were forbidden from fighting against each other. At this moment, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chun, appeared. He glanced at the sky where the sacred mountain had vanished before looking at the people who wielded the protector swords deeply. He said, "It looks like the selection of the protector swords this time has ended. Everyone return." With that, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall vanished. "Father, I obtained a protector sword." Xian Ming showed off his protector sword in front of Xian Zhan excitedly. "Xian Zhan, your son is impressive. He wields a protector sword. From today onwards, your son is a protector of our Radiant Saint Hall." The 7 other leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall all gathered over as well. They all stared at the protector sword enviously. "Good, good, good." Xian Zhan smiled from ear to ear as he felt extremely proud. To another side, Donglin Qiushui arrived before Donglin Yanxue. She was excited as well. As for Han Xan, he held the protector sword as he became rather dazed. The surprise was just too great. Even now, he still found it to be unreal. The selection of the protector swords officially came to an end. 6 of the 9 protector swords had chosen a master, while the remaining 3 vanished with the sacred mountain. The artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance no longer spoke. Very soon, all the hallowed Saint Masters gathered in the Tower of Radiance left. Only a portion of the late Divine King hallowed Saint Masters chose to remain. They planned to break through to the primordial realm in the Tower of Radiance and condense soul trees before leaving. Gongsun Ji did not continue to hide in the Tower of Radiance. His confidence swelled after obtaining the first protector sword, Godslayer's sword. He no longer feared the mysterious expert who specifically targeted the late Divine King hallowed Saint Masters. Just when Xian Zhan, Xian Ming, Baiyu, Donglin Yanxue, Han Xan, and Gongsun Ji left the Tower of Radiance with their protector swords, the celestial sword saint slowly opened his eyes on the sword god mountains. He glanced in the direction of the Radiant Saint Hall indifferently and murmured, "Spiritual swords condensed from the ancient sword clan. I never thought that there would be traces of the ancient sword clan in the Tower of Radiance of the Radiant Saint Hall. This clan has already gone extinct." At the same time, an extremely unkempt beggar-like old man sat leisurely on a rattan chair in the imperial capital of the Violet Wind Empire in the southern region of the Desolate Plain. He guarded the teleportation formation that could take people to other planes. At this moment, the unkempt old man stiffened slightly. He suddenly sat up straight, and the light in his eyes flickered. He stared straight at the central region of the Desolate Plain, where the Radiant Saint Hall resided. Chapter 2506. As he murmured to himself, the unkempt old man had already vanished. No one discovered his departure. Even the soldiers guarding the teleportation formation did not sense him at all. When the unkempt old man appeared again, he had crossed an extremely great distance, directly arriving in the central region from the southern region. He stood outside the protective formation of the Radiant Saint Hall. At this moment, the protective formation of the Radiant Saint Hall had already been fully activated, unleashing its greatest power. From afar, the entire Radiant Saint Hall seemed to be enveloped by a huge, semicircular barrier of energy. The unkempt old man did not give off any presence at all. He hovered outside the protective formation like a ghost. Afterwards, with a twist of his body, he drifted towards the protective formation. The protective formation of the Radiant Saint Hall was completely useless before the old man. In the end, the unkempt old man passed through the protective formation without any obstructions, entering the interior of the Radiant Saint Hall. From the beginning to the end, no one discovered anything strange, nor did anyone discover the existence of the unkempt old man. Even the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Qin, had no idea that an uninvited guest had appeared in the Radiant Saint Hall. The old man did not venture any further either. After entering the Radiant Saint Hall, he hovered in the air beside the protective formation. He stared at the sacred hall that hovered above the clouds in the distance, without blinking at all. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space, ignoring the obstruction of the sacred hall. He could see everything within the sacred hall clearly. It's actually caused by the 6 swords. The 6 swords aren't forged from materials. Instead, they seem more like powerful creatures. A strange light appeared in the unkempt old man's eyes. After a moment of thought, he emitted an extremely obscure presence of the senses of his soul, enveloping the entire radiant St. Hall. Very soon he gathered a lot of information. The 9 protector swords? I never thought that the Tower of Radiance would hide such a wondrous item. With these protector swords, no one on the desolate plain will be able to stop the radiant St. Hall from today onwards. Probably even the celestial sword saint with the 3 lives sword god's legacy will be powerless to stop them. I just wonder if the radiant St. Hall will be ambitious enough to expand outwards. Otherwise, the desolate plain will probably be flooded with blood. The unkempt old man glanced in the direction of the sacred hall deeply before submerging himself into the protective formation again. He left there silently, coming and going as he pleased. Before long, all the protective formations of the radiant St. Hall were shut down. The entire radiant St. Hall became defenseless. At the same time, Xianzhan, Xianming, Baiyu Yan Shui, Hanexan and Gongsun Ji all raised their protector swords. Suddenly, the power of the protector holy swords erupted like a flash flood, shocking all the top experts in the barren state. The radiant St. Hall did not choose to hide the existence of the protector swords. Instead, they directly announced it to everyone. Immediately, all the peak experts on the desolate plain roused. They all left where they cultivated and hurried to the radiant St. Hall in shock and unease. At the same time, Jianqin and Su Ran left the Prosper Plain through a teleportation formation on the extremely distant Prosper Plain. Soon after the 2 of them left, a huge tower suddenly appeared where the heavenly palace of Bixing resided in the central region of the Prosper Plain. With a heavy rumble, it landed heavily on the empty ground before the heavenly palace of Bixing. The tower was extremely huge, several 100,000 meters tall. From afar, it seemed like a spine that supported the world. It was extremely shocking. Moreover, its weight was astonishing. When it landed on the ground, the entire Prosper Plain shook a few times. Just by landing on the ground, the tower had basically shaken up the entire plain. To no surprise, the ancient tower was the Anata Tower that Jianqin had returned not long ago. However, the Anata Tower was countless times larger than when Jianqin possessed it. It was also at this moment that the heavenly palace of Bixing suddenly shone brightly. A blinding, golden light shone from the heavenly palace of Bixing, enveloping the Anata Tower. The scorching golden light seemed to possess a merciless might. Under the envelopment of the golden light, the slashes that covered the Anata Tower rapidly weakened. The layer of golden light was clearly weakening the power of the slashes. At the same time, the power hidden in the depths of the Anata Tower seemed to awaken from its slumber after being enveloped by the golden light. It began to cooperate with the golden light, exhausting the power of the sword slashes from both inside and outside. The slashes had been left behind by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt in the past. They formed a powerful seal that had sealed up the Anata Tower for over 3 million years. It was also because of the existence of the seal that not only was the Anata Tower unable to be repaired, but it was also unable to unleash the full power of the Anata Tower. The slashes possessed intelligence. Faced with the threat, all the slashes on the Anata Tower shone brightly. Terrifying sword chi erupted to resist the attack. Supreme sword intent enveloped the entire Prosper Plain. Figures flickered outside the heavenly palace of Bixing's territory. Peak experts appeared silently as they stared at the colossal Anata Tower. It's the Anata Tower. The Anata Tower has returned. What terrifying sword chi! The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt really is the greatest expert of the Immortals world after all. The sword chi he left behind on the Anata Tower all those years ago is still there. It still possesses such power after so long. The artifact spirit of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing is currently using the power of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing to refine the sword chi. The Heavenly Palace of Bishing really is a peak god artifact. Just the power of the Heavenly Palace itself is so terrifying. Before long, the news of the Inita Tower returning to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing spread across the entire Saints world with lightning speed. Many peak experts who had fought over the Inita Tower sighed when they heard the news. Regret and reluctance appeared in their hearts, and they all gave up on pursuing Jianshen. They pursued Jianshen mainly to obtain the Inita Tower and return it to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing in exchange for great merit, so that they could establish ties with the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Now that the Inita Tower had returned to its rightful owner, it was meaningless for them to continue searching for Jianshen. On the other side, Jianshen and Su Ran had already crossed a small portion of the Saint's world after being constantly teleported. They returned to the Star Brilliance Plane. The Grand Prime you want to kill is from the Star Brilliance Plane? Su Ran frowned slightly as she stood on the Star Brilliance Plane. The Star Brilliance Plane was the territory of the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. She felt some fear towards a peak expert like that. Chapter 2507. The 5-Point Sect was a rather renowned peak organization on the Star Brilliance Plane. Everyone knew about it. After arriving in the territory of the 5-Point Sect, Jianshen and Su Ran only asked around casually before learning the location of the 5-Point Sect. Afterwards, they directly made their way over. Before long, Jianshen and Su Ran arrived at the entrance of the 5-Point Sect. The 5-Point Sect was established in a spiritual mountain that was extremely abundant with origin energy. The entire mountain was enveloped by a layer of thick, white mist which was barely visible. The white mist was not actually white mist. Instead, it was condensed from origin energy that was extremely dense. The 5-Point Sect held a disciple acceptance ceremony once every 100 years. Whenever that happened, many cultivators would rush over from the Star Brilliance Plane to join the 5-Point Sect as a disciple. They would take pride in joining the 5-Point Sect. Today just happened to be the 5-Point Sect's disciple recruitment ceremony that occurred once every 100 years. Thus, there was already a sea of people before the entrance of the 5-Point Sect. Various carriages and formidable flying beasts carried numerous young geniuses of extraordinary birth over from all over, and all of them were gathered here. Many of the cultivators who had come to join the sect were ordinary people. When they saw the flickering carriages and powerful birds, they all became fearful and retreated far away. At this moment, 3 streaks of golden light shot over from the horizon. They were 3 birds covered in golden feathers. They were extremely powerful, possessing the battle prowess of early divine king. A young man stood on the backs of the 3 golden birds. He possessed a striking appearance, and his face was filled with undisguised arrogance. All the cultivators who had come to join the sect moved aside when they saw the 3 birds. To be able to use early divine king birds as mounts, they definitely belonged to large clans that possessed primordial realm experts. Move! At this moment, someone called out from the 3 birds. 2 of the birds flapped their wings and landed in the crowd with a powerful wind pressure, causing a disturbance. That was not all. Whether it was intentional or not, the 2 golden birds flapped their huge wings. Immediately, the cultivators who were closer to the 2 birds were swept away. Some of the weaker cultivators vomited blood and were severely injured. After all, these 2 birds had the strength of the early divine king realm. Even though they did not have any killing intent, a simple movement from them could cause serious injuries to some weaker warriors. However, all the martial practitioners gathered in front of the 5-Flower Sect's mountain gate did not dare to voice their anger in the face of the 2 flying beasts' tyranny. The 5-Point Sect did not stop anything that happened here. Clearly, they had an attitude of not caring. Scram! At this moment, a cold shout was heard. The 3rd golden bird flapped its wings and started to descend. The place where it landed was exactly where Jianqin and Su Ran were standing. Jianqin and Su Ran did not move at all. They had no intention of moving at all. The young man on the bird was enraged when he saw this. He sent a message to the golden bird, and a sliver of cold light immediately appeared in the bird's eyes. Its sharp claws immediately targeted Jianqin and Su Ran. Jianqin frowned. Kaya's death had already filled him with killing intent. At this very moment, he was like an extremely unstable volcano. However, with the slightest provocation, he would erupt violently. His eyes turned cold. With a gentle wave of his sleeve, light immediately surged into the air as sword intent filled the surroundings. A resplendent strand of sword chi shot towards the golden bird. The sword chi was like a rainbow and as fast as lightning. With a flash, the bird with the cultivation of the early divine king realm was cut in half by the sword chi. Blood rained down like rain. On the other hand, the young man standing on the bird directly fell from the sky. His entire body was covered in blood, and he was in a sorry state. He stood on the ground and pointed at Jianqin. He was both surprised and furious. Originally, he wanted to curse, but when he saw how composed Jianqin was, he did not dare to say anything. The primordial realm, it's actually the primordial realm. A series of deep cries rang out from the nearby carriage. The divine king realm experts could tell Jianqin's strength, and they were all shocked. With the primordial realm expert's voice, all the cultivators gathered there were shocked. They all looked at Jianqin. In the saint's world, the primordial realm was already an impressive figure. Existences like that would enjoy a certain level of status in any peak organization. They were very rare to see. At this moment, a ruddy old man flew out from the entrance of the 5-Point sect. He was a peak divine king realm expert, and he was in charge of recruiting disciples this time. He directly arrived before Jianqin and asked about Jianqin's intentions extremely politely. "I want to see the Point Cloud Venerable," Jianqin directly said. The old man was immediately stunned. He stared at Jianqin blankly as he doubted his ears. The Point Cloud Venerable was the ancestor of the 5-Point sect, a renowned peak expert on the star brilliance plane. How could he be seen so easily? Even some primordial realm experts would struggle to see the Point Cloud Venerable unless they had reached the same level as him. That's probably a little. The old man was troubled. "Sigh, old man knew you would come." At this moment, an obscure voice rang out in the surroundings. It was impossible to tell where the voice came from. Ancestor. The old man from the 5-Point sect, who was a peak god king, immediately became stunned when he heard the ancient voice. "Come in," the Point Cloud Venerable said again. With that, the space before Jianqin twisted, forming a space gate in the end. The space in the saint's world was extremely tough, and the laws were extremely powerful. Only peak experts with an extremely deep comprehension of the laws of space could create a space gate here. Jianqin entered the space gate without any hesitation as he looked at it. Su Ran followed closely behind him. In the blink of an eye, he and Su Ran vanished from the entrance of the 5-Point sect, leaving behind a large group of dumbfounded cultivators. Jianqin and Su Ran hovered in the air in the forbidden grounds of the 5-Point sect. The white-robed Point Cloud Venerable stood before them with his hands behind his back. He looked at Jianqin with mixed feelings. "Junior, Jianqin greets Senior." Jianqin greeted him as a junior, but he did not show any respect at all. He was neither haughty nor humble. "Jianqin, tell me why you've come," said the Point Cloud Venerable. His gaze remained on Jianqin the entire time. He directly ignored Su Ran beside him, not even glancing at her. It was as if Su Ran's cultivation as a chaotic prime was nothing in the Point Cloud Venerable's eyes. "I want to know that person's identity," said Jianqin. "The person who hunts you down calls himself the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He has just become a 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. He's probably the weakest among the 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. The Point Cloud Venerable looked at Jianchen deeply and continued, "If you want to take revenge on the Elder of Mountains and Seas, don't waste your efforts, because the Elder of Mountains and Seas is already dead." "What? He's already dead?" Jianchen was stunned. He was filled with disbelief. Chapter 2508. Jianchen fell silent when he heard that. He had spent so many 5-colored divine crystals in exchange for an opportunity for the experts of the Myriad Bone Guild to take action. All of this was so that he could kill the Elder of Mountains and Seas and avenge Kea. In the end, when he returned to the Star Brilliance Plane and asked about the Elder of Mountains and Seas, he unexpectedly learnt that his enemy was already dead. This news surprised him. At the same time, he felt empty inside. He could not personally take revenge, so Kaya's vengeance could not be considered avenged. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. What organization does the Elder of Mountains and Seas belong to? Jianchen continued after quite a while. The Point Cloud Venerable could naturally sense that the news of the Elder of Mountains and Seas' death did not weaken Jianchen's killing intent at all. This made him sigh gently inside. If it were not for the Elder of Mountains and Seas' death, if it were not for the fact that the supreme blood-tier Grand Exalt of the Saints' World had been alarmed, he definitely would not have treated Jianchen so carefully. It was exactly because of what happened on the Star Brilliance Plane that the Point Cloud Venerable deeply understood that Jianchen was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. The Elder of Mountains and Seas is the heaven-splitting ancestor of the Gloomwater sect on the Aqua Plane, said the Point Cloud Venerable. The Gloomwater sect on the Aqua Plane. Jianchen growled as he committed the name to memory. Afterwards he asked again, "Last time when Senior destroyed the heaven-obscuring barrier of floating water from the Elder of Mountains and Seas, you mentioned the karma between you and me. However, I don't know Senior, so where does this so-called karma come from? Is it because of the sudden closure of the teleportation formation in the 5-Point sect?" The Point Cloud Venerable nodded slightly, but he said nothing. Jianchen stared at the Point Cloud Venerable for a while. He remained indifferent the entire time. Afterwards, he clasped his fist at the Point Cloud Venerable in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. He said, "Thank you for telling me about the Elder of Mountains and Seas, Senior. Farewell." Jianchen turned and left. The Point Cloud Venerable had suddenly ordered the interplanar teleportation formation to be closed, causing Kea to die on the Star Brilliance Plane. How could this karma be resolved so easily? However, he also understood that the Point Cloud Venerable was much more powerful than the Elder of Mountains and Seas, and he controlled the laws of time and space. What he used against the Elder of Mountains and Seas might not be effective against the Point Cloud Venerable. As a result, he could not do anything to the Point Cloud Venerable right now. All he could do was endure for now. The Point Cloud Venerable stood with his hands behind his back. He stared at Jianchen's back as if he could see through what Jianchen was thinking. He sighed helplessly inside. "Jianchen, if you want to destroy the Gloomwater sect, it's probably impossible with just the two of you." "That's because the protective formation of the Gloomwater sect was cast down by the Elder of Mountains and Seas at a tremendous cost. It's so tough that it can block the attacks of 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. If you want to get through the formation, you'll need a 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime at the very least. If you insist on destroying the Gloomwater sect, Old Man can get through the protective formation for the two of you. Moreover, the Yushui sect has a hell spring that produces hell water. Only a single droplet of hell water can be condensed every 1,000,000 years. Even to Grand Primes, it has wondrous effects. It's extremely precious and priceless. Old Man estimates that the Gloomwater sect has over 10 droplets of hell water at the very least. As a result, if you destroy the Gloomwater sect, various powers on the Aqua Plane will definitely come and interfere, competing for the hell spring and hell water. Moreover, the organizations that are on good terms with the Gloomwater sect might come and reinforce the Gloomwater sect at a crucial moment. Old Man can help you persuade the various experts on the aquaplane not to interfere with your grievances with the Gloomwater sect, said the Point Cloud Venerable. He was extremely confident in himself, as long as he appeared, none of the experts on the aquaplane would dare to disobey him. Indeed, the Point Cloud Venerable did possess such strength and prestige, as the overall strength of the aquaplane was nowhere close to the Star Brilliance plane. However, the Point Cloud Venerable was a renowned peak expert on the Star Brilliance plane. His existence alone was enough to make the 5-Point sect the 9th peak organization on the Star Brilliance plane. The Point Cloud Venerable had indeed gone to great lengths to resolve the karma between him and Jianchen. Jianchen paused when he heard that, but he did not express anything. He left with Su Ran. After leaving the 5-Point sect, Jianchen constantly wondered why the Elder of Mountains and Seas had died as he walked through the bustling streets. The Elder of Mountains and Seas was a peak 3rd, heavenly layer Grand Prime after all. How could someone so powerful die so easily? Jianchen found this rather surreal. This was because Grand Primes were very difficult to kill. Even if they encountered powerful enemies that they could not defeat, they could use various secret techniques to flee. As long as the difference in strength was not too great, it was basically very difficult to stop them. However, the Elder of Mountains and Seas was a mighty 3rd, heavenly layer Grand Prime. Yet he could not even flee. Just how powerful was the mysterious expert who killed him? After thinking about it, he discovered that out of all the experts he knew, probably only the Celestial Sword Saint and Mo Tianyan possessed such an ability. Moreover, Jianchen discovered that the Point Cloud Venerable's attitude was rather abnormal when he met him this time. It did not seem like the attitude a peak expert should have towards a weaker cultivator. Moreover, the Point Cloud Venerable had gone to great lengths to resolve the karma between them. Jianchen understood that the Point Cloud Venerable probably knew something, but he just did not want to tell him. The light in Su Ran's eyes constantly flickered as she followed beside Jianchen silently. She had heard every single word of the conversation between the Point Cloud Venerable and Jianchen. The strange death of the Elder of Mountains and Seas and the Point Cloud Venerable's attitude towards Jianchen made her think. Very soon, Jianchen and Su Ran left the Star Brilliance plane. They arrived on the Aqua plane, one of the 49 great planes of the Saints' world, through a teleportation formation. However, neither Jianchen nor Su Ran sensed a middle-aged man sitting on the greatest peak in the central region of the Star Brilliance plane. He silently watched their every move until they left the Star Brilliance plane. He was the supreme figure of the Star Brilliance plane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. It looks like Jianchen plans on going to the Aqua plane to destroy the Gloomwater sect. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord murmured. The light in his eyes flickered before he stood up and left the Star Brilliance plane. On the Devour plane, one of the 7 sacred planes of the Saints' world, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord stood politely in a blood-red divine hall on the blood tier Grand Exalt. Before him was a figure shrouded in a dense mist of blood. The figure was the blood tier Grand Exalt, a sovereign of the Saints' world. Are you saying that you want Jianchen to die in an accident on the Aqua plane and sever the possibility of an Ata, comprehending the way of emotions, extinguishing through Jianchen? The Blood Tier Grand Exalt said coldly. Chapter 2509. It's not as simple as you imagine it to be. If you want to stop an Ata, you can only become her enemy. Moreover, since Jianchen is an Ata's fruit of ways, an Ata must be secretly paying attention to his movements at all times. If you want to kill Jianchen, you have to get through an Ata first, said the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. He felt some fear towards the Anata Grand Prime. However, if Jianchen really does die due to an accident, it will indeed affect Anata greatly. After all, Grand Exalts are the laws of the world, and the laws of the world are emotionless. Anata is willing to fall into the web of love for the sake of comprehending the way of emotions, which has already gone against the laws of the world. As a result, she needs to kill Gentian to comprehend the way of emotionlessness so that she can break free from the web of love and return to herself. If Gentian, the thread that can allow her to break free from the web of love, is severed and she's unable to return to herself, she'll face great problems sooner or later. Master, should we find an opportunity? The 9 Brilliant Star Lord asked carefully. Before he could finish, the Blood-Tear Grand Exalt raised his hand to stop the 9 Brilliant Star Lord from continuing. He said, "You can't act recklessly in this matter. Anita is secretly paying attention to Gentian's movements right now. Although she hasn't fully recovered, Hurl can descend anywhere in the Saint's world in a single moment. If she doesn't want to, no one can kill Gentian. However, the chaotic Palea-Chi in the chaotic space will erupt soon. At that time, all the grand exalts of the Saint's world, Immortal's world, and Demon's world will head to the chaotic space. Anita will naturally be no exception. If she goes to the chaotic space, she won't be able to sense anything in the Saint's world. This might be an opportunity. Master, doesn't that mean we can?" The 9 Brilliance Star Lord's eyes lit up. "Whoever kills Gentian will become Anita's mortal enemy. If Gentian really does die in an accident, his death can't have anything to do with you," the Blood-Tear Grand Exalt said sternly. "I understand. In a bustling city in the central region of the Aqua Continent, Gentian and Su Ran had just walked out of a regional teleportation formation. They had already entered the territory of the Gloomwater sect. The city they were currently in belonged to the Gloomwater sect. In the Yushui sect, the only Grand Prime is the Elder of Mountains and Seas. But now that the Elder of Mountains and Seas is dead, the Gloomwater sect's strength will naturally decrease drastically. The only problem is the chaotic primes of the Yushui sect," Su Ran said to Gentian secretly as she analyzed the current strength of the Gloomwater sect and discussed the matter of destroying it. "The Yushui sect has 5 great elders. The 5 great elders are all chaotic primes. There's 1 early chaotic prime, 2 mid-chaotic primes, and 2 late chaotic primes. The 3 early and mid-chaotic primes aren't difficult to deal with. What's truly troublesome are the 2 late chaotic primes. I've already investigated their strength. They're at the 9th heavenly layer and the 8th heavenly layer, respectively." Su Ran became rather stern. She said, "I'm a 5th heavenly layer chaotic prime right now. If I include the various ancient abilities and secret techniques I know, I can defeat 6th heavenly layer chaotic primes. And that's only if they're regular 6th heavenly layer chaotic primes. If it's people with extraordinary talent, comprehension of powerful laws, and battle prowess, I might only be able to match them. As for 7th heavenly layer chaotic primes, they're late chaotic primes. With my current level of cultivation, even if I come across regular 7th heavenly layer chaotic primes, I'll only be able to protect myself. I won't be the opponent of 8th heavenly layer chaotic primes. Then what about the 9 tribulations incineration formation?" Gentian asked. He was calm. He did not feel pressured at all because of the Gloomwater sect's strength. This time, he had made sufficient preparations. He had come to kill the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Even the Elder of Mountains and Seas was a 3rd heavenly layer Grand Prime, so a few mere chaotic primes were nothing to them. "You still don't understand the 9 tribulations incineration formation. The 9 tribulations incineration formation is a wondrous formation that specializes in attacking the soul. If it's used against a single person, it can unleash its greatest power, even against Grand Primes. It can affect even Grand Primes. If it's used against many people, its power will plummet. After all, a wondrous formation that specializes in attacking the soul is different from regular formations." Su Ran looked at Gentian and said, "Moreover, there's only 1 9 tribulations incineration formation, while the Gloomwater sect has a total of 5 chaotic primes. This formation might not be able to envelop all of them. As a result, just in case, we might have to use the opportunity we had in the Myriad Bone Guild." Senior, this must be your first time in Scarlet Water City. B by map. It explains every single place in Scarlet Water City in detail. At this moment, a young girl who only seemed to be 16 or 17 pulled back Jianchen. She stared at Jianchen with some timidity in her bright eyes as she tried to sell a map of Scarlet Water City to Jianchen. Jianchen studied the young girl and discovered that she was pretty. Although she was not an alluring beauty, she gave off an unsullied bearing. Moreover, she was pitifully weak. She was only a heaven sent master, and her clothes were in tatters. She seemed like a little beggar. Jianchen could tell with a single glance that the young girl's true age was just like her appearance. She was only in her teens. She was definitely not an old monster who had cultivated for countless years. A pitifully weak young girl who was only in her teens was selling maps in Scarlet Water City where there were many godhood experts. Just how much courage did this require? The slightest carelessness could lead to her death. Jianchen could not help but stare at the young girl deeply. In particular, when he saw the young girl's slightly timid, nervous, and eager gaze, his heart seemed to soften. He said, "All right, I'll buy one. How many divine crystals?" The young girl's eyes immediately lit up when she heard that. She immediately became excited and said in a hurry, it's not expensive at all. Senior, a map of Scarlet Water City only costs 10 low-grade divine crystals." With that, the young girl stared at Jianchen nervously as if she was afraid that Jianchen would go back on his word. Afterwards, Jianchen took out 10 low-grade divine crystals and bought a map from the young girl. However, he secretly shoved 1,000 high-grade divine crystals into the young girl's low-grade space ring. The young girl was just too weak, so he did not dare to give her supreme grade divine crystals directly. He was afraid of bringing trouble to the young girl. High-grade divine crystals were relatively safer. Afterwards, Jianchen and the young girl said nothing more. They left with Su Ran. There are countless insignificant people like them in the saints' world. Your sudden kindness might become your weakness one day in the future, said Su Ran, who had been paying attention to everything. Jianchen said nothing. Instead, he slowly opened the map he had bought from the young girl. The map was very crude and could be described as not professional at all. It could not be compared to the maps sold in shops at all. Even the streets drawn on the map were crooked and irregular. Jianchen sighed and sighed as he looked at the map. He could tell with a single glance that the young girl had probably personally drawn the map. Let go of me, let go of me. I beg you, let go of me. Don't take me. At this moment, a familiar cry rang out. To the side, a few cultivators in uniform walked by. The young girl who had just sold the map to Jianchen had been forcefully taken away by one of the cultivators. Chapter 2510. Such a scene was naturally seen by many cultivators on the street. Everyone looked at the girl who was taken away with sympathy and pity, and no one dared to stand up and stop them. It was as if the deities who had taken away the girl made many of the gods, and even the more powerful over-gods, fear them. They dared not provoke them. Jianchen's eyes turned cold when he saw this. He arrived before the people in a flash and asked emotionlessly, "May I ask what crime this girl has committed? Why have you taken her away?" The deities were stunned when they saw Jianchen appear before them. However, they sneered soon afterwards. One of them looked at Jianchen with a scornful gaze. "Kid, do you know who we are? I advise you to mind your own business, or you won't be able to get out of here alive. Otherwise, you won't be able to make it out of Scarlet Water City alive." "Sir, they're the subordinates of the young master of Scarlet Water City. You can't offend them." At the same time, many cultivators' messages rang out in Jianchen's head. Jianchen immediately understood everything when he heard them mention the young master of Scarlet Water City. His eyes immediately turned cold, and he said coldly, "Release her." The subordinates of the young master of Scarlet Water City became furious when they saw how Jianchen did not know what was good for them. Their faces all sank, and 3 of them immediately pulled out low-quality saint artifacts as they bellowed out furiously. They charged towards Jianqin with surging killing intent. Jianqin remained emotionless. With a casual wave of his hand, the street immediately lit up with dazzling light. Sharp sword qi enveloped the subordinates of the young master of Scarlet Water City. Immediately, the 3 low-quality saint artifacts directly disintegrated under the sword qi, reduced to fine dust. The deities who had taken away the girl seemed to be cut into pieces under the sword qi. Their bodies began to vanish, and all their bones were reduced to dust. In an instant, the deities vanished. They had been reduced to nothingness under the sword qi. However, they were not dead. Their souls hovered there as they stared at Jianqin blankly in fear. Jianqin had only destroyed their bodies and not their souls. The bustling street instantly became completely silent. At this moment, everyone on both sides of the street involuntarily stopped walking. Their faces were filled with shock as they stared at the few clusters of Yuan spirits floating in the air. A storm rose in their hearts. Destroying the bodies of a few deities was nothing difficult. The overgods in the crowd could do it easily. However, it was rather shocking that Jianqin could make their bodies disappear with just a casual wave of his hand, leaving only their souls behind. Just you wait. At this moment, the souls finally returned to their senses. They said viciously before immediately flying towards the city, Lord's estate. However, Jianqin acted like he had done something insignificant. He did not care about the fleeing souls at all. He slowly made his way over to the girl and asked, "Are you fine?" The girl was extremely pale. Her face was filled with fear and dread. She could not help but pull away from Jianqin as she said with a trembling voice, Originally, she wanted to say, "I'm fine," but she was unable to utter the last 2 words due to her trembling voice. After all, she was only in her teens. She had not experienced much, so her mental fortitude was naturally not great. Everything that had happened had frightened her silly. "Don't be afraid. With me here, no one in Scarlet Water City can harm you," Jianqin said gently. Su Ran stood to one side and watched everything silently. She said nothing. In her opinion, Jianqin's actions were completely pointless. She had already cultivated for who knows how many years, so she had seen similar things countless times. She was already numb to it. So she basically did not feel pity like Jianqin did. At this moment, a pressure appeared. Under the lead of an old man, over 100 armored soldiers flew over with lightning speed from the direction of the city Lord's estate. "Caretaker, it's him. He's the one who destroyed our bodies." One of the souls who had just been destroyed by Jianqin said loudly beside the old man. Without the old man's orders, the soldiers behind him all surged over, surrounding Jianqin and the girl. The little girl was nervous and scared to the extreme. Her petite body was trembling. "Don't be afraid." Jianqin gently placed his hand on the girl's shoulder as he comforted her. "Who are you? How dare you injure the people of our city, Lord's estate in Scarlet Water City? How bold of you!" the old man called out coldly from 3 meters in the air. "What crime has this girl committed? Why are you taking her away?" Jianqin stared straight at the old man. The old man immediately snorted coldly with that. He said, coldly, "In Scarlet Water City, the city lord has the final say in who we capture and what crime we punish. You, on the other hand, have injured the people of our city, Lord's estate. This is a crime punishable by death." With that, the old man waved his hand and ordered, "Capture this person. If he resists, kill him on the spot." Immediately, all the cultivators gathered on the 2 sides of the street moved away. At that moment, all the structures on the 2 sides of the street activated their formations as well. The 100 or so soldiers that surrounded Jianqin and the girl fell into a battle formation in a single instance. Powerful energy surged as they charged towards Jianqin. Is the city lord's estate of Scarlet Water City always so tyrannical? If that's the case, There's no need for the city lord's estate to remain, Jianchen said coldly. He directly ignored the battle formation of the 100 or so soldiers. Even though there were many gods among the soldiers, and the battle formation was powerful enough to threaten over gods, it was still nothing before Jianchen. He continued to wave his sleeves, and with a wave of his hand, the battle formation collapsed. In an instant, over 100 soldiers were heavily injured. Then, with a flash of his body, he arrived in front of the old man like a ghost. Before the old man could react, he grabbed the old man by the neck and lifted him up. The old man was astounded. Only now did he realize that he had provoked a terrifying expert. Filled with fear, he said with difficulty, "Scarlet Water City is the territory of the Gloomwater sect. Our city lord is an envoy of the Gloomwater sect. Offending us is equivalent to offending the Gloomwater sect. The Gloomwater sect will not spare you." It would have been better if he had not mentioned the Gloomwater sect. Now that he did, Jianchen's killing intent immediately surged. Originally, Jianchen had no intentions of killing the old man. However, when the old man mentioned the Gloomwater sect, Jianchen struggled to suppress his killing intent. Chapter 25:11. The moment the old man died, the powerful senses of the soul suddenly swept over from Scarlet Water City, enveloping the entire street. The owner of the senses of the soul was a peak divine king. Originally, it should have been impossible for them to discover Jianchen with the strength of the senses of the soul. However, Jianchen did not hide himself. He let out his presence slightly, disguising himself as an early divine king. This caused his body to be clearly exposed to this divine sense. Humph! A cold snort rang out in Jianchen's head. It was filled with killing intent. At the same time, the ground of Scarlet Water City suddenly shook. A powerful formation rose up, enveloping the entire city. Even all the teleportation formations in the city stopped functioning at that moment. In a single moment, the entire city was completely sealed off from the outside world. Jianchen glanced past the protective formation of the city before looking in the direction of the city lord's estate. He did not take it to heart. Instead, he looked at the girl and asked, "Little girl, where are your parents?" The girl seemed to forget about her fear when she heard that. Her eyes reddened as she slowly explained her origins. As it turned out, her name was Fongjing. She was only 16 years old. When she was born, both her parents had passed away, so her grandfather had raised her single-handedly. Her grandfather was an insignificant figure who lived at the bottom of the saints' world. He was only a divine emperor, not even at the origin realm. However, even with that being the case, Fongjing was able to live a carefree life under her grandfather's care, even though she was unable to obtain endless cultivation resources. However, good times did not last forever. Her grandfather was injured by someone in Pool Water City 3 years ago. He was heavily injured, and his life was hanging by a thread. He could die at any time. After losing her grandfather's support, Fongjing began a life of self-reliance. She used a map of Pool Water City that her grandfather had found a long time ago and drew it herself. She created rough maps, stroke by stroke, and sold them. Afterwards, she used the divine crystals she obtained from selling the maps to buy low-level healing pills that cost 100 low-grade divine crystals each, keeping her grandfather alive. My grandfather needs to eat a pill every month to keep his life. It's already been over 20 days, and I've already sold 9 maps this month. I only need 1 more, and I'll be able to gather enough divine crystals for a pill. Fortunately, I wasn't captured by them, or I definitely wouldn't have been able to sell 10 maps this month. If I couldn't give my grandfather the pill on time, he wouldn't have been able to survive. Those people are just too evil. Fongjing, face was filled with lingering fear. Right now, there was only her grandfather in her heart. Jianchen sighed as he listened to the girl's bitter and tragic fate. After a moment of silence, he said, "I plan on going to the city, Lord's estate. Little girl, come with us." I'll let you personally witness the people who wanted to capture you disintegrate right before your eyes. Jianqin also understood that his actions were far too cruel to a girl who had yet to mature. However, this was the saint's world, a world where the strong preyed on the weak. If one wanted to survive in this world, they needed to adapt to its laws. At the same time, 3 middle-aged men sat around a round table in the city lord's estate. Various delicacies had already been placed on the table. One of the 3 people was the city lord of Scarlet Water City, Guan Fiu. The other 2 were envoys of the Gloomwater sect. They were late Divine King experts. Brother Feiyu, why has your face suddenly changed? And it seems like the protective formation of Scarlet Water City has been activated as well. The 2 envoys from the Gloomwater sect looked at the city lord, Guan Feiyu. They spoke rather politely. This was because not only was Guan Feiyu an envoy of the Gloomwater sect like them, but one of the ancestors of the Guan family was an esteemed elder of the Yushui sect. As a result, the 2 envoys fawned over Guan Feiyu. They did not dare to offend him at all. It's fine. There's just a small problem. Please wait for a moment. I'll be right back. Guan Feiyu stood up and was about to leave. Boom! However, at this moment, a deafening rumble rang out. The entire city, Lord's estate, shook. The formations of the city, Lord's estate, had suffered a powerful attack. Guan Feiyu, who was about to leave, immediately paled. Killing intent filled his eyes as he said coldly, I was just about to go out and find you. Yet you actually came here yourself. Humph, you're still so arrogant after killing the people of the city, Lord's estate. You're looking to die. With a single movement, Guan Feiyu vanished. At this moment, Jianqin stood outside the city, Lord's estate, with his hands behind his back. He stood leisurely before the entrance of the estate. Behind him was the indifferent Su Ran and the panicked Fang Jing. Around Jianqin, over a dozen armored soldiers rolled on the ground as they cried out in pain. Who are you? How dare you act so recklessly in my Scarlet Water City? With a loud call, the city lord Guan Feiyu appeared. He hovered in the air with a surging presence. The 2 other envoys of the Gloomwater sect appeared behind Guan Feiyu as well. They radiated with sharp presences, clearly showing that they were on Guan Feiyu's side. The young master of Scarlet Water City wants to capture this girl. Let me ask you, what crime has this girl committed? Why do you want to capture her? Jianqin calmly asked. She's just a mere heaven, Saint Master, let alone capturing her, so what if we kill her on the streets? As long as she's in Scarlet Water City, no one dares to go against the decisions of the city, Lord's estate. But you, on the other hand, not only have you killed the people of the city, Lord's estate, you've even maliciously attacked the estate. This is a crime punishable by death. You will be executed without mercy, Guan Feiyu coldly replied. He stared fixedly at Jianqin with hawk-like eyes. Seeing how fearless Jianqin was, he dared not to be careless. He immediately formed seals with his hands and controlled the protective formations of the city. Immediately, the protective formations around the city shone brightly. Powerful pulses of energy surged out like a tsunami. A tremendous pressure blanketed the surroundings, causing all the people in the city to pale in shock. Guan Feiyu was cautious. Even though Jianqin had only displayed the cultivation of an early Divine King, which was much weaker than late Divine King Guan Feiyu, he still chose to use the power of the formations to injure Jianqin. The protective formations of Scarlet Water City had been cast down by the ancestor of the Guan family who had broken through to the primordial realm. With the formations in operation, they could even fend off primordial realm experts. Of course, these so-called primordial realm experts were only early infinite primes. Chapter 2512. He's actually using the protective formation cast down by the ancestor of the Guan family. It consumes quite a lot of energy every time it's activated. Brother Feiyu, aren't you overreacting a little? Using the power of a protective formation to kill an early god king is indeed like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. The two envoys from the Gloomwaters sect discussed softly behind Guanfeiyu. Clearly, the two envoys did not take Jianqin seriously. However, in the next moment, something that shocked the two envoys happened. Jianqin extended a finger towards the sky, and a strand of sword qi immediately shot out from the tip of his finger. Like a dazzling bolt of lightning, it shot into the sky with the power of the laws of the sword. When the sword qi came in contact with the pillar of energy from the protective formation, there was no rumble as expected. The huge pillar of energy was directly cleaved in half by the sword qi, causing its energy to disperse in all directions. Afterwards, the sword qi did not slow down at all. It continued to surge into the sky and viciously slammed into the protective formation of the city with devastating might. Boom! Immediately, a deafening boom exploded in the sky. The entire Scarlet Water City shook violently. The ground shook as if an extremely terrifying earthquake had occurred. Many of the ancient structures in the city collapsed, one by one. The protective formation of Scarlet Water City had been ripped open in the sky. The many formation cores that made up the formation all exploded at that moment. Immediately, the protective formation around the city was completely destroyed, unable to be repaired. The mayor of Scarlet Water City, Guanfeiyu, who had personally witnessed this, widened his eyes. He stared at the sky of Scarlet Water City in shock. Primordial Realm. Guanfeiyu was rather tongue-tied. He stared at Jianqin with an ugly expression. Deep fear and some anger filled his eyes. At this moment, Guanfeiyu cursed inside. Since you're a Primordial Realm expert, why don't you just show your strength directly? He would never dare to act recklessly before a Primordial Realm expert. Everything could be resolved through negotiation. However, you just happened to hide your strength, causing something as trivial as this to develop into the current situation. In particular, Guanfeiyu's heart bled when he saw the destroyed protective formation of Scarlet Water City. That was a Primordial Realm formation. It was extremely difficult to cast down. Senior, Guanfeiyu said with an ugly expression. However, Jianqin did not give him any time to speak. He extended a finger, and another strand of powerful sword qi struck the protective formation of the city, Lord's estate, with the pressure of the Primordial Realm. There were a total of 2 powerful formations in Scarlet Water City. One of them was the protective formation of the city over the entire city. The other was the array formation of the city, Lord's Mansion. It was only used to protect the city, Lord's Mansion. Both of these formations were at the level of the Primordial Realm. Moreover, the formation of the city, Lord's Estate, was even more powerful than the one in Scarlet Water City. However, there was a limit to how powerful it was. It could only block attacks from 3rd Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes. However, Jianqin's battle prowess had already reached the level of a 6th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime without using a god artifact. The formation that could only block attacks from 3rd Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes was naturally nothing before him. With a great rumble, the formation around the city, Lord's Estate, collapsed loudly from Jianqin's attack. Powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc, directly destroying the ancient structure that had existed for who knew how long. In a single moment, the city Lord's Estate was reduced to ruins. Many armored soldiers and a few servants fled through the ruins in horrible shape. Jianqin's control over energy had reached a level of perfection. The power of his attack just happened to be enough to destroy the formation of the city, Lord's Estate, and the ripples of energy just happened to be enough to raise the estate to the ground without harming too many innocent people. Senior, what's the meaning of this? Don't forget that our Scarlet Water City is the territory of the Gloomwater sect. Guanfeiyu's face changed drastically. He had witnessed Jianqin's power from destroying the formation of the city, Lord's Estate, so easily. I've said it before. There's no need to keep the city, Lord's Estate, in Scarlet Water City. Jianchen said as killing intent surged from him. The destruction of the Gloomwater sect would begin with Scarlet Water City. Guan Feiyu understood the severity of the matter when he sensed Jianchen's killing intent. Without any hesitation, he immediately crushed a jade talisman and asked for help from the Gloomwater sect. Brother Feiyu, let's return to the sect immediately. Behind Guan Feiyu, the two envoys of the Gloomwater sect had already paled. They bid farewell to Guan Feiyu without any prior agreement. Afterwards, they ignored Guan Feiyu's attitude and immediately flew off in the direction of the Gloomwater sect as quickly as they could. Don't even think about leaving, people of the Gloomwater sect. Jianchen's gaze was cold. He did not even glance at the two envoys. However, his eyes suddenly became extremely bright at that moment, as if there was endless sword chi hidden in them, preventing people from looking at them directly. Suddenly, a terrifying sword intent permeated the surroundings. With Jianchen as the center, it enveloped a range of 100,000 kilometers. This was Jianchen's ultimate way of the sword. With the appearance of the ultimate way of the sword, Jianchen immediately became the only god within the range of 100,000 kilometers. He ruled over the lives and deaths of all cultivators below him with a single thought. The two envoys of the Gloomwater sect, who had already fled several thousand kilometers away, felt like they were in an ocean of sword chi. At that moment, the endless sword chi drowned them, reducing them to a bloody mist. They did not even have the chance to cry out before their souls were wiped out. Why, you actually killed a disciple of the Gloomwater sect. Guan Feiyu cried out. The Gloomwater sect was one of the peak sects in this region. Killing a disciple of the Gloomwater sect was not as easy as killing a member of the city lord's estate. At this moment, a cry rang out. A naked young man had been bound by an invisible force and taken into the air from the ruins of the city lord's estate. His face was filled with fear. The young man was the young city, lord of Scarlet Water City. From the looks of it, he was clearly committing adultery. Jianchen suddenly looked at the young man. In the next moment, the young man shrieked out miserably. His face was filled with extreme pain as if he was going through the cruelest torture in the world. His naked body began to vanish bit by bit from his feet, turning into a rain of blood that drifted down from the sky. It gradually spread towards his waist and then his head. In just a few seconds, the young city, lord of Scarlet Water City, was dead. He had died to Jianchen's ultimate way of the sword. His soul had been wiped out, just like the other two disciples of the Gloomwater sect. In the end, Jianchen looked at the city lord of Scarlet Water City, Guan Feiyu. With a thought, Guan Feiyu's soul was directly wiped out, following in the footsteps of the other four people. With Jianchen's current level of cultivation, his ultimate way of the sword could determine the life and death of any divine king. No one was an exception. Only primordial realm experts could contend against him. From today onwards, the city lord's estate of Scarlet Water City no longer exists. I'll give you 10 seconds. All unrelated people leave the city lord's estate. After 10 seconds, I'll kill them all, Jianchen said coldly. His words had just sounded when human figures began to emerge from the ruins of the city lord's mansion. Many soldiers and servants, whose faces were covered in dust, left this place with the fastest speed possible. 10 seconds later, there was not a single person left alive in the ruins of the city lord's estate. Jianchen waved his hand gently, and sword chi immediately descended. It was endless, moving through the ruins like a rain of light. Chapter 25:13. The city lord's estate of Scarlet Water City had been reduced to dust by Jianchen's sword chi, dispersing with the wind. The surroundings of the city lord's estate were already packed with people. The disturbance in the city lord's estate was just too great. It had alarmed all of Scarlet Water City. All the cultivators with some strength had gathered there. They stood far away and stared blankly at the buildings that had disappeared in front of them. Waves of shock surged in their hearts. Not only was the city lord's estate the sky of Scarlet Water City, but it was also the representative of the Gloomwater sect. It possessed an extremely great background. Yet now, the city lord's estate had actually been razed to the ground. This shocked everyone to the extreme. Everyone's gazes gathered in front of the city lord's mansion at the same time. There was a young man in a white robe whose clothes fluttered in the wind. Expressions of admiration, shock, dread, and fear appeared one after another. Fan Jing, you don't have to worry about the people of the city lord's estate making things difficult for you in the future. Jianqin's expression did not change at all. He was as calm as the wind as he turned his head and said to the girl behind him. However, Fan Jing did not seem to hear Jianqin at all. Her eyes were wide open as she stared fixedly at the flattened city lord's estate. Disbelief filled her face. In Fan Jing's eyes, the city lord's estate of Scarlet Water City had always been an unreachable, sacred place. It was the ruler of Scarlet Water City. No one dared to disobey the orders of the city lord's estate. Yet now, the city lord's estate that was like a god in her eyes had completely vanished before her. Fan Jing was left stunned for quite some time. She had never thought that the young senior, who had bought a rough map from her earlier, would actually be such a terrifying expert. However, at this moment, Jianqin's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared at Fan Jing, without blinking at all. He saw strands of karma strands on Fan Jing's body. Each strand of karma strands extended in different directions. This was nothing. There was karma in the world. All cultivators would be entangled by karma to varying degrees. However, this karma was something that only those who had comprehended the way of karma could see. Apart from those super experts who had reached the peak of cultivation, only those who had comprehended the way of karma could see. The Tao of karma was something that Jianqin had comprehended through the samsara immortal exalt back when he was in Poseidon Palace. That was why he could see the karma threads. He had bought a map from Fan Jing, before saving her from the people of the city lord's estate. Now he had even used the matter of Fan Jing, to destroy the city lord's estate. As a result, he had formed karma with Fan Jing. However, to Jianqin's surprise, the karma line between him and Fan Jing was extremely thick. Judging by the strength of the karma line, it had far surpassed the level of strangers meeting by chance. It was at least 1,000,000 times stronger. Jianqin was stunned. He could not figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. How could his karmic thread with Fan Jing be so powerful? Jianqin gazed deeply at Fan Jing. His eyes flickered with surprise and doubt. After a moment of silence, he said again, Fan Jing, let's go check on your grandfather. With that, Jianqin waved his hand. The laws of space permeated the air, and he vanished with Fan Jing. He could see Fan Jing's karma line. Through it, he already knew the exact location of Fan Jing's grandfather in Redwater City. Sigh. Looking in the direction that Jianqin and Fan Jing had vanished in, Su Ran sighed gently as he stood to one side. Then he vanished silently as well. In an extremely remote area of Scarlet Water City, there was a small stone house made completely of rubble. The light in the stone house was dim, and there was a faint stench that quietly filled the air. At this moment, the space before the stone hut suddenly rippled. Jianqin and Fan Jing appeared silently. Only then did Fan Jing snap out of her daze. She looked at the stone hut that she had lived in for over a decade that had suddenly appeared before her eyes. She could not help but cry out. Wasn't she in the city lord's estate? Why had she suddenly returned home? Fan Jing felt like she was dreaming. Let's go in and check on your grandfather, said Jianqin. His thread of karma with Fan Jing was so deep, so his opinion of Fan Jing had changed. Although he had no idea why his thread of karma with Fang Jing had become so deep, he understood that his relationship with her was definitely not as simple as a chance acquaintance. Fang Jing glanced at Jianchen timidly. After a moment of hesitation, she gently pushed open the wooden door and entered. The space within the stone house was very small, and the light was very dim. Near the corner of the room was a pale-faced old man. He was lying on a stone bed without any strength. The floor beside him was covered in dried blood. The stench was coming from this blood. Fang Jing seemed to have already grown accustomed to the stench. She did not show any abnormalities. As soon as she entered the stone hut, she threw herself at the old man. Deep concern and sorrow filled her face. "Grandfather, grandfather, I'm back." Fang Jing called out softly, as if she was afraid that she would disturb the old man if she was too loud. When he heard that, the old man's eyelids trembled slightly. Finally, he opened his eyes with great difficulty, revealing a pair of dim, lifeless eyes. Jianchen stared at the old man. He wanted to see if the karma line between him and Fang Jing had anything to do with the old man. In the end, he was disappointed. He had no karma line with the old man. In other words, before he came here, he had nothing to do with the old man. "Jing, you're back. You haven't been mistreated in the past few days outside, have you?" the old man said weakly. His eyes were filled with love and guilt. Fang Jing shook her head. She said, "Grandfather, I've already sold 9 maps this month. As long as I sell 1 more map, I'll be able to buy a healing pill for you and let you live for another month. Don't worry, grandfather. I'll definitely work hard to sell maps. Once I've earned enough divine crystals, I'll buy some high-grade pills and let you recover completely. Give this pill to your grandfather. Not only can this pill completely heal your grandfather's wounds, but it can also allow your grandfather's cultivation to progress greatly." Jianchen's voice rang out. He handed a thumb-sized pill to Fang Jing. He's actually using a god-tier pill to heal a martial artist who's only a holy emperor. What a waste! Suran could not help but mutter outside the stone hut. Thank you, senior." Fang Jing accepted the pill from Jianchen in surprise and joy. She fed it to her grandfather excitedly. Immediately, tremendous essence qi enveloped the old man. The effects of the god-tier healing pill began to take effect, forming a layer of faint white mist that enveloped the old man. In just a few breaths of time, your grandfather's injuries will be completely healed. However, the medicinal power of this pill is very strong. The remaining medicinal power will increase your grandfather's cultivation. Therefore, your grandfather will not wake up immediately after his injuries are healed. He will cultivate for a period of time. "He'll cultivate for a while," Jianchen said to Fang Jing. After some hesitation, he took out a cultivation method and some cultivation resources from his space ring and gave them to Fang Jing. He said, "In the future, don't sell maps. Find a quiet place and cultivate properly. Only by becoming powerful can you survive in this world." Chapter 25:14. Jianchen's assistance to Fang Jing are only extended so far. Even Jianchen did not understand why the thread of karma between them was so thick. Before he understood the mysteries behind the threads of karma, Jianchen naturally would not nurture Fang Jing as much as he could. This was because threads of karma were both good and bad. However, his current comprehension of the way of karma was still too shallow, and his understanding of the way of karma was not deep enough. As a result, he was unable to tell whether the thread of karma between him and Fang Jing was good or bad for him. As a matter of fact, the reason why he could even see Fang Jing's thread of karma was because her cultivation was too low. If he encountered a cultivator with a higher cultivation, he would not be able to see their thread of karma, the way of karma. Jianchen thought and secretly shook his head. He mainly cultivated the way of the sword right now, so he did not have the time or energy to comprehend the way of karma. He had no idea when he would be able to comprehend the way of karma to a profound level. He had comprehended far too many laws right now. Apart from the most powerful way of the sword, there were also the laws of creation, the laws of destruction, the laws of fire, the laws of corrosion, the laws of curses, the laws of strength, and the laws of space. He had obtained these 7 laws from the golden core of laws he had inherited from the depths of the desolate plain. Right now, he was only at the early divine king realm, so they were not very useful to the opponents he faced right now. Moreover, there were also the laws of the hallowed and martial soul force. As a result, he did not have the time or energy to increase his comprehension of the other laws. After all, the comprehension of every single law required a very long time. He had to take it step by step. There were no shortcuts. "There's an infinite prime heading this way," Su Rant's voice rang out in Genshin's head. Genshin nodded. He knew that the city lord of Scarlet Water City, Guan Feiyu, had crushed a jade talisman before he died, so he had expected a primordial realm expert to come. This was exactly what he wanted. If he could kill a few primordial realm experts here, he would face less resistance when he went to destroy the Gloomwater sect. Genshin and Su Ran left silently. They left Scarlet Water City and flew towards the Gloomwater sect. In the end, they stopped 10 million miles away from Redwater City. Scarlet Water City's teleportation formation was sealed. If one wanted to go to Scarlet Water City from the Gloomwater sect, they had to pass through this place. Around the time it took for an incense stick to burn, an old man rushed over from afar like a blur, heading straight for Crimson Water City. He gave off a tremendous presence. Clearly, he had reached the level of an infinite prime. Genshin, on the other hand, was floating in the air with his arms crossed. He was at the same height as the old man, blocking the old man's path. The old man stopped a kilometer away from Genshin. His eyes were like torches as he stared at Genshin. "Who are you?" "You're a member of the Gloomwater sect?" Genshin answered with a question. He was emotionless. The old man snorted coldly and called out, "Old man Guanwan, an elder of the Gloomwater sect. Sir, why are you blocking the old man's path?" As he said that, the senses of Guanwan's soul had already expanded. It reached 10 million kilometers away in a single instance, enveloping the entire Scarlet Water City. Immediately, his face changed drastically. Killing intent surged from him as he became furious. He called out, "Who is it?" "Who destroyed the city, Lord's estate? The old man will definitely reduce you to ashes." Afterwards, Guanwan suddenly looked at Genshin. His gaze was shocking and terrifying. He said furiously, "It's you. It must be you, right? You actually destroyed my Guan family. That's right. It was me. However, your strength as a second heavenly layer infinite prime is nowhere near enough to reduce me to ashes. Moreover, I didn't destroy your Guan family. I only destroyed the Gloomwater sect," Genshin said coldly. He did not take the Guan family seriously at all. With that, Genshin struck out decisively. Sword Qi radiated from him, and countless strands of sword Qi suddenly appeared. They gathered together, forming a dazzling ball of white light that enveloped Guanwan in an instant. Genshin comprehended the ultimate way of the sword. He was the king of the way of the sword. The laws of the way of the sword were so powerful that they had completely surpassed experts of the same level. With just a thought, he could condense countless strands of sword Qi that could change as he wished. Even though Guanwan put up a defense as soon as he was enveloped by the sword Qi, he was unable to stop the attacks that came from all directions. The shield that he formed with his own energy was shattered under the attack of the sword Qi. The armor on his body only lasted for a breath of time before it was full of holes. Although Guanwan was a second heavenly layer infinite prime, he did not possess a god artifact. His most powerful defensive armor was only a supreme quality saint artifact. With Genshin's current strength, he could easily destroy a saint artifact of that level. Arg! Guanwan bellowed out furiously. He used a secret technique, and the energy within him erupted. The power of laws enveloped him as well. He struck out with his full strength, dispersing some of the sword chi before charging out as quickly as he could. When he charged out of Genshin's domain of sword chi, he was in an extremely horrible shape. He was covered in various types of damage reduction, and he was covered in blood. "Who the hell are you?" Guan Wan's expression changed. His expression became incomparably dignified as he spoke in a terrified voice. In just a single clash, he had been reduced to such a horrible shape. The young man before him was definitely not someone he could deal with. In the next moment, a simple jade talisman appeared in Guan Wan's hand. A simple and unadorned jade talisman appeared. His first thought was to ask the sect for help. An infinite prime's request for help will probably alarm chaotic primes. "I can't let you do as you wish." Genshin's eyes turned cold. An extremely thin, white line flickered at the tip of his finger. This was sword chi, an extremely powerful strand of sword chi. It was condensed from Genshin's comprehension of the ultimate way of the sword. Even though it did not seem like much, it was so powerful that it could even surprise mid-infinite primes. The sword chi vanished with a flash, and in the next moment, Guan Wan produced a painful groan. Blood spurted out from Guan Wan's wrist as he held the jade talisman. His hand had been severed. Before he could crush the jade talisman, it fell to the ground. "Die." Genshin's eyes were cold. He suddenly pointed at Guan Wan, and the space there shook slightly. A bloody, finger-sized hole silently appeared on Guan Wan's forehead. His head had been pierced, and his soul had shattered. He was dead. A second heavenly layer infinite prime had died to Genshin's hands just like that. Genshin had slain him effortlessly. Genshin was not affected at all. He arrived beside Guan Wan in a flash and removed his space ring. He stowed it away along with his corpse. Chapter 25:15. The immortal devouring orchid resided in a divine hall that Genshin carried with him. By devouring the divine king's corpse, its strength would increase at all times. However, the immortal devouring orchid was just too weak. Even if it was given the corpse of the divine king, it would need a very long time to completely digest it. However, as its strength rapidly increased, its devouring speed would become faster and faster. I have already enveloped this region with an ability, isolating it from the outside world. As a result, the disturbances from your battle with Guan Wan won't be discovered by the chaotic primes of the Gloomwater sect. Let's go. Let's go to the Gloomwater sect. Suran appeared and said to Genshin. Genshin nodded and flew off in the direction of the Gloomwater sect silently. Very soon, Genshin arrived in an ancient mountain range filled with extremely abundant origin energy. It was shrouded in mist, and the scenery was beautiful. It seemed like a paradise. This was the base of the Gloomwater sect. Genshin and Su Ran concealed their presences and hovered outside the base of the mountain range silently. The two of them could clearly see that there was a formation hidden within the dense mist in the depths of the mountain range. The formation was extremely powerful. Even with Genshin's strength, it was impossible for him to get through it, even if he used everything he had. As a matter of fact, he could not even shake it up. The formation is very powerful. In my opinion, even first heavenly layer grand primes won't be able to get through it. There's nothing I can do about it. Su Ran looked at the protective formation of the Gloomwater sect and frowned slightly. Although she had learnt many secret techniques of the heavenly palace of Bishing from her master, which just happened to include a way to get through formations, she would be powerless once the level of the formation exceeded her strength by too much. Genshin, let Old Man destroy the protective formation of the Gloomwater sect for you. Go ahead and destroy the Gloomwater sect. Old Man will help you persuade the other sects on the Aqua Plane not to interfere with the matters of the Gloomwater sect. At this moment, an old voice rang out in Genshin's head. Genshin instantly recognized that this was precisely the voice of the 5-Point sect's Venerable Point Cloud. The Point Cloud Venerable did not wait for Genshin's agreement. He had already made his move as soon as he finished speaking. In the primitive mountain range where the Gloomwater sect was, time suddenly froze. Everything fell silent, whether it was the vegetation or the lingering clouds. Everything froze at that moment. The entire world seemed to have become a picture, frozen for eternity. Even the protective formation of the Gloomwater sect was affected. The tremendous energy that constantly flowed through the formation suddenly came to a halt as well. The entire formation fell into absolute silence. "It's the laws of time," Su Ran exclaimed from beside Genshin. The Point Cloud Venerable's comprehension of the laws of time had already reached an extremely deep level. Even the powerful protective formation of the Gloomwater sect was unable to stop it. Under the influence of the laws of time, the protective formation was unable to replenish its energy, so its defenses had already plummeted. It just so happened that the space above the Gloomwater sect's protective formation pulsed violently at this moment. A huge, crescent-shaped spatial blade descended from the sky, landing on the protective formation. Under the influence of the laws of time, the protective formation of the Gloomwater sect had already been drastically weakened. Now that it was struck by the spatial blade, it immediately collapsed. In the blink of an eye, the protective formation of the Gloomwater sect had been destroyed. The Point Cloud Venerable had destroyed it. With the formation destroyed, the frozen time returned to normal. The grass began to sway once again, and a gentle breeze blew past. It seemed like the entire mountain range had not changed at all. The only change was that the Gloomwater sect hidden in the protective formation had been completely exposed. The fusion of the laws of time and the laws of space really does have an unbelievable effect. It actually didn't destroy a single blade of grass here. Su Ran could not help but sigh in amazement. It said that the Point Cloud Venerable once received the guidance of the Spacetime Elder. His usage of the laws of time and space was probably inspired by the Spacetime Elder. Everyone in the Gloomwater sect has been alarmed. All the chaotic primes have appeared as well. The 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation has a limited range. I need to use this time to envelop all the chaotic primes. With the 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation, Su Ran fused into outer space silently, making his way towards the Yushui sect. At this moment, the Yushui sect's bells boomed. The entire sect descended into chaos. The sudden shattering of the protective formation caused the alarm of the Gloomwater sect to ring. All the experts of the sect emerged from seclusion and gathered in the direction of the square as quickly as they could. There was a discussion hall in the square of the Gloomwater sect. At this moment, 5 figures appeared silently in the air above the discussion hall. They gave off terrifying presences that were as vast as mountains. The 5 of them were the 5 great elders of the Gloomwater sect. They were all chaotic primes. The 5 grand elders all had ugly expressions as they looked up at the sky. Their expressions had become unprecedentedly solemn. Apart from the Point Cloud Venerable of the 5-Point sect, there's probably no one else in the entire Saints world who can comprehend the laws of time and space to such a level. Point Cloud Venerable, our ancestor has made several deals with you. You might not be on very good terms, but you're still acquaintances. May I ask why you're doing this? A great elder of the Yushui sect bellowed furiously. He was the leader of the 5 great elders, Yi Chong. He was a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime, an existence only second to the elder of mountains and seas in the Yushui sect. However, at this moment, Yi Chong's face changed. He called out, "Oh no, disperse!" Before he had even finished speaking, Yi Chong vanished in a single instance, appearing several dozen kilometers away. His reaction was quite fast, but the 4 other chaotic primes were slower by that split second. In that moment, their fates were decided. A formation silently opened up, enveloping the 4 chaotic primes from the Gloomwater sect. Just what I wanted. Su Ran cheered inside. The strongest ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime had not entered the formation, while the 4 weaker ones had all been trapped. Was this not the perfect outcome? This was because if the 9 tribulations incineration formation was used against 5 chaotic primes, the power of the formation would weaken drastically. Once the 5 of them worked together, it would be rather difficult for her to deal with them. Now that the strongest chaotic prime was not in the formation, it was equivalent to the power of the 9 tribulations incineration formation. She only needed to use it against 4 people, so each person would have to endure even more power. Moreover, without the 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime in the formation, even if the 4 of them worked together, it would not be too difficult for Su Ran to deal with them. Who goes there? Yi Chong bellowed out furiously from the Gloomwater sect. Killing intent surged from him as he condensed strands of laws. He swung his blade at Su Ran. The blade was a medium-quality god artifact. It was extremely powerful. The blade shone brightly as it erupted with devastating pulses of energy. It cut through the surroundings and shot toward Su Ran. Kill him. Chapter 25:16. Originally, the Myriad Bone Guild had prepared this opportunity for the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Now that the Elder of Mountains and Seas was dead, they could only use it to kill the 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime Great Elder. Su Ran became extremely stern from Yi Chang's attack in the Yushui sect, but she did not become flustered at all. Although she was not as powerful as Yi Chong, she was not so weak that she could not put up any resistance. With the various secret techniques she knew, she could completely dodge the attack. However, just when Su Ran was about to take action, the space before her suddenly ripped open. A tiny arm suddenly extended out, pressing forward gently. With this press, the space collapsed and the laws collapsed. The terrifying blade light that Yi Chong had unleashed, which could be said to be capable of destroying the world, directly collapsed and turned into nothingness. That was not all. Even Yi Chong, who had launched the attack, suddenly became extremely frightened. Deep fear filled his eyes, and afterwards his body exploded into a bloody mist with a heavy boom. The 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime, Yi Chong, had died. Su Ran's pupils abruptly constricted when he saw this. He revealed a wisp of shock as he abruptly shifted his gaze to the tiny arm. Yi Chong was a mighty 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime, only a step away from Grand Prime. He was a peak expert. Even first heavenly layer Grand Primes would need to expend quite a lot of effort to kill someone like him. However, at that moment, Yi Chong was actually as weak as an ant before this arm that was not very tall and sturdy. Furthermore, it appeared that it was slightly short and small. He did not even have the power to escape and was easily killed. This shocked Su Ran greatly. She was extremely shocked. This definitely isn't the attack of a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. Su Ran cried out inside. The light in her eyes flickered as she stared at the tiny arm that had extended out from the spatial crack. But very soon, she seemed to understand something. She recovered and focused on controlling the 9 tribulations incineration formation to deal with the 4 other great elders of the Gloomwater sect. Outside the Gloomwater sect, Yi Chang's death left Jianqin utterly dumbfounded. He also stared at the small arm as he was shocked. It's actually him. That arm had already allowed Jianqin to guess who the person who had secretly attacked in the Myriad Bone Guild was. That person was actually the young boy he had seen in the Shengzhou branch of the Myriad Bone Guild. The great elder of the Gloomwater sect possesses extraordinary battle prowess. Although regular first heavenly layer Grand Primes can defeat him, they won't be able to stop him if he wants to flee. Jianqin, this strike of mine has completely surpassed the level of a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. You've profited this time. At this moment, the child's voice rang out in Jianqin's head. His voice still sounded a little immature, as if it was the voice of a child who had not yet grown up. However, Jianqin no longer dared to underestimate the child. Thank you, Senior. Jianqin clasped his fist at the space before charging into the Yushui sect with a flash. The death of the leader of the 5 great elders, Yi Chong, had an extremely great impact on the disciples of the Yushui sect. Many of the regular disciples were frightened out of their wits, completely losing their will to fight. They scattered and fled in all directions. The entire Gloomwater sect became even more chaotic with Yi Chong's death. If the sect exists, we exist. If the sect dies, we die. No disciples of the Gloomwater sect are allowed to flee. Stay behind and live or die with the sect. Anyone who flees will be dealt with as traitors. Kill them all. A 9th heavenly layer, infinite prime elder of the Yushui sect bellowed out. He personally took action, killing a few fleeing disciples on the spot. The 9th heavenly layer, infinite prime, clearly possessed great prestige in the Gloomwater sect. With that, all the elders of the Gloomwater sect made up their minds. Determination filled their faces, and they struck out decisively, killing all the fleeing disciples of the Gloomwater sect. The decisiveness and viciousness of the elders made all the disciples of the Gloomwater sect shiver in fear. Immediately, no one dared to flee. All the disciples of the Gloomwater sect, regardless of their cultivation, stayed behind and formed formations to resist. Even more infinite prime elders struck out with their full strength, attacking the 9 tribulations incineration formation from the outside to free the 4 great elders trapped inside. The 4 great elders of the Gloomwater sect worked together within the 9 tribulations incineration formation. They endured the attacks of the formation on the soul as they attacked the formation with their full strength. The 9 tribulations incineration formation specifically targeted the soul, so it was very difficult to fend off the attacks. The 4 great elders knew that the longer they were trapped, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. As a result, they all used their full strength to get out of the formation. As Su Ran had to control the 9 tribulations incineration formation to keep the 4 great elders busy, she was no longer able to fend off the infinite prime elders outside. Immediately, the 9 tribulations incineration formation began to shake violently under the attacks from the primordial realm experts. At this moment, a streak of light shot over. The sword Qi was earth-shaking, immediately cleaving the head of a 1st heavenly layer infinite prime in half, wiping out his soul. Jianqin flew over from outside the Gloomwater sect. He wielded the 9-star sword of heavenly ways as sword Qi revolved around him. His presence was extremely shocking. As he swung his sword, countless strands of sword Qi gathered together. Starlight flickered, dazzling and resplendent as he engaged in a great battle against the infinite primes of the Gloomwater sect with killing intent. Jianqin did not hold back this time. He had already drawn the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. Borrowing the power of the god artifact, his battle prowess rose once again, completely surpassing the level of 6 heavenly layer infinite primes. He stopped all the infinite primes of the Yushui sect all by himself. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways. You're Jianqin. An elder recognized Jianqin from a 9-star sword of heavenly ways and immediately cried out. At the same time, many powerful senses of the soul expanded over from the surroundings on the aqua plane, lingering above the Gloomwater sect. The battle in the Gloomwater sect had caused just too great of a disturbance. It had already alarmed all the peak experts on the aqua plane. Isn't that the 9-star sword of heavenly ways? That little guy, Jianqin, has actually come to the aqua plane. It's just a pity that the Anatat Tower has already been returned to the heavenly palace of Bixing. Jianqin no longer has any value. The peak experts recognized Jianqin immediately as well, and they all sighed. If the Anatat Tower was still with Jianqin, the peak experts on the aqua plane definitely would have fought for it. However, now that the Anatat Tower had been returned to the heavenly palace of Bixing, they naturally lost interest in Jianqin. As Jianqin fought the experts of the Gloomwater sect, the child that Jianqin had seen in the Myriad Bone Guild hovered silently in outer space. No one on the entire aquaplane discovered his existence. Heartless child, you've actually personally killed a chaotic prime. Isn't that beneath you? At this moment, an indifferent voice rang out. Not far from the boy, a middle-aged man silently appeared. The child turned around and stared at the middle-aged man for a while before sniggering. 9 brilliant, Star Lord. This isn't your star, Brilliant's plane. Me killing someone on the aquaplane doesn't seem to have anything to do with you. Moreover, this is a deal between me and Genshin. You must know what our Myriad Bone Guild does extremely well. The middle-aged man was the supreme figure of the Star Brilliance plane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Chapter 25:17. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord did not care about the child's attitude at all. He stared at the heartless child indifferently and said, "Even if your Myriad Bone Guild has a deal with Genshin, just a few regular Grand Primes from your guild are enough to deal with the people from the Gloomwater sect. Why would you, the second in command of the Myriad Bone Guild, take action personally? Moreover, the person you're dealing with is a junior who's only a chaotic prime." The heartless child sniggered when he heard that. 9 Brilliant Star Lord, there's no need for you to worry about who I want to kill. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord stared at the heartless child deeply. After a moment of silence, he suddenly extended his hand and gently extended a finger. Immediately, a layer of resplendent starlight appeared, forming a multicolored screen of light that enveloped him and the heartless child. The screen of light seemed to form a world of its own. The laws were chaotic and the laws were incomplete. It was completely independent from the outside world. The heartless child watched on indifferently. He did not react at all. He remained composed and composed. You're using the power of the laws of the stars to split the world and create a domain of your own, pushing away the laws of the saints' world. You're trying to deceive the heavenly secrets. 9 Brilliant Star Lord, it looks like you have concerns, the heartless child said indifferently. His eyes shone extremely brightly. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord was stern. He did not deny it. You're right. I do have concerns. Heartless child, if I've guessed correctly, you must be helping Genshin because you want to use Genshin to establish a connection with the heavenly palace of Bishing. The heartless child remained calm. He sat down in the air and said, "You're right. I do have such thoughts. The greatest danger of our Myriad Bone Guild is about to arrive. If we can't survive this danger, our Myriad Bone Guild will vanish from the saints' world forever. Genshin might be the crucial person who can assist our Myriad Bone Guild in surviving this danger." After a moment of silence, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord nodded. Over 3 million years ago, the Spirit Sages suffered great losses from the battle against the Immortals' world. Even the strongest expert of the Spirit Sages, the Wind Venerable, went missing after the battle. Back then, your Myriad Bone Guild's guild master thought that the Wind Venerable had died, so he used the Myriad Bone Guild's power to attack the Spirit Sages when they were at their weakest. He wanted to steal the Spirit Sages' ancestral artifact. Because the Spirit Sages lost the Wind Venerable in that battle, there was no one who could contend against you, the heartless child, and the master of the Myriad Bone Guild. In the end, the Spirit Sages suffered extremely heavy losses. Even the sacred item of the Spirit Sages, the blood of the Holy Spirit, ended up in the hands of your Myriad Bone Guild. If it were not for the fact that the Spirit Sages used the power of their ancestral artifact at a crucial moment, the Spirit Sages probably would have been wiped out by your Myriad Bone Guild aside from the Wind Venerable. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord shook his head when he reached there. It's just a pity that the ancestral artifact of the Spirit Sages' ancestral artifact can only be used for defense. As a result, the ancestral artifact can only prevent the Spirit Sages from being wiped out in the hands of the Spirit Sages. It can't do anything to your Myriad Bone Guild. The heartless child's face became rather sunken. He said gruffly, "That time we miscalculated. We still underestimated the Wind Venerable's strength. I never thought that he would actually survive from the hands of the grand exalt of ancients and profundity. It's just a pity that our myriad bone guild searched the saint world for over 1,000,000 years with everything we had, but we still failed to find where the wind venerable was hiding. We lost the perfect opportunity to kill him. Now that such a long time has passed, Feng Zunja's injuries should have more or less healed. Killing him will become more and more difficult. Once his injuries are completely healed, it will be a calamity for our 10,000 bone guild. Deep fear appeared in the heartless child's eyes when he reached there. He said gruffly, "The wind venerable is just too powerful. Although he's a 9th heavenly layer grand prime like my brother, we're definitely not his opponent even if we work together." The 9 brilliant star lord could not help but scoff when he heard that. Even if you work together with the master of the Myriad Bone Guild, you're only equivalent to a dark gold king of the ancient great apes at most. You might even be slightly inferior. However, the Wind Venerable killed 2 dark gold kings consecutively all by himself in the past. It's exactly because of that our Myriad Bone Guild has to search for a way to deal with the Wind Venerable. My brother once divined the heavenly secrets. Although he still failed to find where the Wind Venerable was hiding, he divined that the Wind Venerable was about to appear. He must have recovered his strength very soon, said the heartless child. Heartless child, if your Myriad Bone Guild wants to use gentian to establish ties with the heavenly palace of Bishing, I'd advise you to stop wasting your efforts. The 9 brilliant star lord suddenly said as the light in his eyes flickered. The heartless child's eyes narrowed. He stared straight at the 9 brilliant star lord and said, "Your master is a sovereign of the saints' world, so you must have already known that the Inata Grand Exalt is still alive." The Inata Grand Exalt allowed Jianqin to carry the Inata Tower, which means that there must be some unknown relationship between Jianqin and the Inata Grand Exalt. As long as the Inata Grand Exalt is willing to stand with us, even if the Wind Venerable of the Spirit Sages is not a Grand Exalt right now, he won't be able to touch our Myriad Bone Guild. The corner of the 9 brilliant star lord's lips curled into a faint sneer when he heard that. He said, "Heartless child, you're oversimplifying things. However, you're right about one thing. There is indeed an unknown secret between Jianqin and the Anata Grand Exalt. I only learnt about this secret from my master. Jianqin is actually the Anata Grand Exalt's fruit of ways. He's just a tool for the Anata Grand Exalt to comprehend laws. Once the time is right, the Anata Grand Exalt will take back the fruit of ways. At that time, Jianqin will die to the Anata Grand Exalt's hands. As a result, you're dreaming if you hope that Jianqin can establish ties with the heavenly palace of Bishing. What did you say? Jianqin is the Anata Grand Exalt's fruit of ways?" The heartless child was shocked. The 9 brilliant star lord nodded and said, "Moreover, I have another piece of news to tell you. The Wind Venerable of the Spirit Sages has recovered his strength many years ago. The reason why he has never appeared is because his cultivation method has reached an extremely crucial point. He no longer has the time to care about anything else." The heartless child's face immediately changed when he heard that. He became extremely stern. "This is the Wind Venerable's position. According to the rules of your Myriad Bone Guild, I should be asking for a large number of treasures from you, but I'll just give them to you for free right now. If it were possible, I wouldn't want the Wind Venerable to remain alive because he's just too powerful." The 9 brilliant star lord extended a finger, and a speck of starlight immediately shot into the heartless child's hand. Afterwards, he vanished, having left the place. The heartless child glanced at the map in his hand before looking at the aquaplane. He saw Jianqin fighting against the primordial realm experts of the Gloomwater sect. I really never thought that you would actually be the Anata Grand Exalt's fruit of ways. Fruit of ways, this is just too perfect." The heartless child's sternness vanished, replaced by a strange smile. The heartless child exerted a slight amount of strength in his hand, and the starry sky map that recorded the location of Feng Zunjie's hiding spot was crushed into pieces. Chapter 25:18. The heartless child looked at Gentian again, and a strange light flickered through his eyes. He thought, however, I need to let my elder brother know that Gentian has the Aneta Grand Exalt's fruit of ways, and then we can come up with a plan. With that, the heartless child vanished. He also left, no longer paying any attention to Gentian's matters. The Yushui sect was currently embroiled in the flames of battle on the Aqua Plain. Su Ran had trapped the 4 chaotic primes of the Yushui sect with the 9 tribulations incineration formation. She was currently supporting the formation with all her strength as she clashed with the 4 chaotic primes. Jianchen stood guard outside the formation with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, keeping all the primordial realm experts of the Yushui sect busy. They were unable to work together to attack the formation. Even though there were 40 or 50 infinite primes in the Yushui sect, not only did they fail to gain the upper hand when they worked together against Jianchen, but they even seemed to be suppressed by Jianchen. This was because Jianchen's battle prowess was just too great. Without using the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, he possessed the battle prowess of a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime. Out of the 50 or so elders of the Yushui sect, only 7 of them could match Jianchen. Even the weakest of the 7 elders was a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime. However, probably only the 3 late infinite primes could defeat Jianchen. Now that Jianchen had used the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, his battle prowess had risen once again. He had completely surpassed the level of 6th heavenly layer infinite primes. Out of the 50 or so infinite primes of the Yushui sect, only the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime elder could keep him at bay. Jianchen did not fight against the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime elder. He wielded the 9-star sword of heavenly ways as sword chi revolved around him. He radiated with surging sword intent as he killed through the crowd. He specifically targeted the weaker elders. Spurt! Spurt! Blood spurted into the sky above the Yushui sect. Every single droplet of blood pulsed with powerful energy. They were like beautiful blooming flowers as they rained down from the sky. Jianchen was unstoppable. He charged into the encirclement of the elders and slaughtered his way through. In a short amount of time, 5 elders had died to the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. Without any exception, the elders were all early infinite primes. They were basically powerless against Jianchen at that level. Suddenly, a cage completely condensed from fire appeared in the sky, silently. It surrounded Jianchen with the might of a god-tier battle skill. This was a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime elder of the Yushui sect. He comprehended the laws of fire, so he used a god-tier battle skill against Jianchen. The god-tier battle skill was enough to pose a fatal threat to 6th heavenly layer infinite primes, but Jianchen directly ignored it. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways in his hand shone with dazzling light. Resplendent starlight descended as he directly swung out. Boom! With a deafening sound, the cage of fire was shattered by Jianchen. He had destroyed the god-tier battle skill with a single strike. Jianchen's hair danced wildly as his presence surged. He did not fear the terrifying heat from the remaining fire at all. He shot out from the flames like a sword, and the 9-star sword of heavenly ways shone brightly as he directly stabbed towards the elder who used the god-tier battle skill. Even though the elder was a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime, his face could not help but change drastically before the might of Jianchen's strike. With a wave of his right hand, a circular shield silently appeared, radiating with the might of a god artifact. To no surprise, the shield was a low-quality god artifact. Jianchen's 9-star sword of heavenly ways shone with starlight as it landed on the shield with devastating power. It was accompanied by the laws of strength. With the amplification of the laws of strength, not only was Jianchen's strike astonishingly powerful, but the power it contained was extraordinarily terrifying as well. The primordial realm expert who blocked Gentian's strike with the shield felt his right arm suddenly ache. Afterwards, he lost his senses. The circular shield was a god artifact, so it was completely unscathed from the strike. However, the primordial realm elder who wielded the shield had his arm shattered by the terrifying power. Gentian's strike was just too powerful. Even with a defensive god artifact, he was unable to block it completely. Suddenly, there was a flash of light and resplendent starlight. Gentian stabbed out a second time. He used the laws of space this time, and the 9-star sort of heavenly ways seemed to break through the limits of space. It moved with unbelievable speed, arriving before the 5th heavenly layer infinite prime in a single instance. The expression of the 5th heavenly layer infinite prime suddenly changed. His eyes narrowed to the size of needles. He felt like the space around him had been sealed up when he faced the strike, making it impossible for him to dodge. It was as if all he could do was take it head-on. When Gentian stabbed out, the space around him tightened as well. Terrifying power gathered behind him as a shriveled hand struck towards Gentian's back with lightning speed, surging with energy and the power of laws. Wherever the hand passed by, space would shake. This was the strongest elder of the Yushui sect, a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. When Gentian struck out against the 5th heavenly layer infinite prime, the greatest elder of the Gloomwater sect had struck out as well. His actions could be described as attacking the 5th heavenly layer infinite prime. If Gentian insisted on attacking the 5th heavenly layer infinite prime, he definitely would not be able to avoid the palm strike that would come from behind. The palm strike possessed the power of a peak infinite prime. Any expert below the 7th heavenly layer of infinite prime would be heavily injured, even if they managed to survive it. Moreover, many primordial realm elders in the surroundings attacked Gentian at the same time. Over a dozen attacks locked onto Gentian as they tore through the air. However, the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime had miscalculated. Gentian did not dodge the palm strike at all. Instead, he directly used his back to take it on. The 9-star sword of heavenly ways in his hand did not slow down at all, stabbing into the 5th heavenly layer infinite prime's forehead decisively. Immediately, a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime was directly wiped out. Bang! At the same time, a series of thuds rang out. When Gentian killed the 5th heavenly layer infinite prime, he also endured over a dozen attacks from other primordial realm experts. To no surprise, the most powerful attack came from a palm strike from a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. Immediately, energy surged in the sky. The ripples of energy swept out in all directions as a destructive storm, reducing the mountains and rivers below to a mess.